Hello and welcome to Board Game TV, and today we're going to be taking a look at something new for this channel. I'm going to be ranking all 22, not including Spider-Man Far From Home, and I'll explain in a minute, Marvel Cinematic Universe movies in the order that I like them. Now, first of all, I want to say that I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is a once-in-a-lifetime event, to be honest with you. It is a monumental task in filmmaking, and for people my age, or a few years younger, or a few years older, now I'm in my mid-40s, I was born in the early 70s, never did we ever think something like this would ever happen. Comic book fans from those those days, never in a million years thought this would happen. I was a big fan of the comic books. Mainly Marvel, some DC, but mostly Marvel. I read Marvel in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And as a kid in the 70s, superheroes were a joke. You had some lame cartoons. You had the Hulk TV show. You had the Shazam, the Captain America, the made-for-TV movies like Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, and they were horrible. Even for that time, they were bad. They were nothing like the comics. And you know, when you were a little kid and you see them, yeah, they're pretty cool, but you still knew in the back of your mind that it was nothing like the comics, and it just wasn't any good. Then something happened which changed the way things were looked at, and that was Star Wars. Star Wars came out. It was a big hit. Changed the scape of the culture and movie making in general. And I was lucky enough to be alive and see that movie at the theaters and be around for that time and see how people acted and reacted to it. But Star Wars brought about a bunch of movie studios were willing to say, hey, we want our next Star Wars. What can we use to make something like this? Well, one studio thought of Superman. And so the Superman movie was made, which if Star Wars had never been successful, Superman never would have been made at that time. And the Superman movie was a big hit. And Superman 1 and Superman 2, which came out in the early 80s, were both good movies. And they were both really successful. However, none of the studios really capitalized on the success of Superman. There were no other real superhero movies coming out at that time, for whatever reason. Then Superman 3 and 4 happened, and that kind of put a kibosh on the comic book movies, because they were terrible, and they did terrible. And so for a while, you didn't have anything really worthwhile. Then in the late 80s, again, a studio took a chance and Batman came out. Tim Burton's Batman. Now, a few years later, his second movie, Batman Returns, came out. And they were both successful. The first one was the big successful one. And actually that movie brought people back into comic books. And a few movies did spawn from Batman's success. We had a horrible Punisher movie, a horrible Captain America movie, and then you had some independents like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Mask, The Crow, which was a really good movie, but you know, other than that, they started going downhill. The Batman series went downhill with Batman Forever, and then of course Batman and Robin killed the franchise. You had some terrible movies like Judge Dredd and Tank Girl come out, and of course Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 and 3 were just awful. And so the comic book movies went kibosh again, with nobody really able to matching the success of Batman. And you know, in the 90s, the comic book industry, in the early 90s, the comic book industry was booming, and as many comic book movies as we had come out, you know, I never thought we'd see that many come out, But we had plenty come out. But I still never thought that there would be anything like a cinematic universe. I never thought I'd see Batman and Superman in the same movie, or anything like that, or Captain America and Spider-Man in the same movie. And so, let's pan to the late 90s. Well, then something happened again. You had the X-Men movies, you had the Blade movies, and you had the Spider-Man movies all start around the end of the 90s, early 2000s. And while Blade 1 and 2 were pretty good, Spider-Man 1 and 2 were pretty good, and Spider-Man 2 is considered to be one of the best superhero movies of all time, and X-Men 1 and 2 were really good, and X2 was a freaking masterpiece. The third movie in each of those franchises killed the series just about. Blade Trinity, with all its woes, was a flop, and so no more Blade movies were ever made. Spider-Man 3 was just nowhere near as good as the first two, and so that killed that Spider-Man series. And then X3 killed the X-Men, and it would take a couple years for that studio to revive with First Class. However, with the success of those movies, studios took a somewhat welcoming view to comic book movies, especially now that in the late 90s, because of Marvel's bankruptcy, they sold the rights to a bunch of their superhero properties to a bunch of different studios. So in the early to mid 2000s, comic book movies were being made left and right off a lot of these Marvel properties. However, we all know I would say honestly, terrible results of a lot of these movies. The Daredevil movie, the Ghost Rider movie, which breaks my heart, Elektra, Halle Berry's Catwoman, X-Men Origins Wolverine, Ang Lee's The Hulk. I mean, these were just really, really terrible movies, in my opinion, and I think most people agree as well. Elektra. I mean, come on. And so, the flop after flop after flop, critically and financially, of a lot of these movies, I was pretty sure that we still, even at that point in time, we're never going to see a cinematic universe type thing, and that comic book movies would just be oversaturated, and they would die off, and it would be another long period before we got a really good movie. However, unbeknownst known to me at that time, a little movie that was about to take shape. And no, I'm not talking about the Fantastic Four movies, which were again terrible. I'm talking about Iron Man. Now, if I had been a betting man in 2008, I would have said this movie would have been a flop. This movie never stood a chance. I mean, if you come to think about it, the smart money was that this movie was never going to stand a chance. You had Iron Man, who's considered a B to C level superhero, getting his own movie. People were going, why? Marvel Studios, this was going to be their first movie. Although Paramount would distribute, this was going to be their first movie. They're an unproven studio. So why even, they have no track record, so why bet on them? Robert Downey Jr., at that point in time, lest we forget, his career was washed up. I mean, he had been dealing with drugs and prostitution and arrest and all kinds of stuff. And then Jon Favreau was set to direct, which Jon Favreau is more of a storyteller than an action guy. So all the smart money would have been that Iron Man would have failed. However, if you go back and look at it again, more logically, you would see that there were a lot of things that said, hey, this could be a success and this will be a success. Iron Man, even though he's considered a B to C level superhero, is not really a B to C level superhero. He has been around in comics, I think since the 60s. He's had his own comic. His own comic has lasted several decades. He's been a founding member of the Avengers and been in Avengers comics for several decades. And he has been an important part of the Marvel comic universe. He, for just whatever reason, gets overlooked. He gets thought about maybe as like a, I don't know, poor man's Batman. Even though he's not poor, he's just a guy in a suit. Batman's a guy in a suit who's just much more interesting. So he gets overlooked, but he has been a major player. Marvel Studios, being going to be their first film, is hungry and wanting to prove themselves and willing to take risk. And they definitely do not want to come out with a dud out the gate. They are sick and tired of seeing all these other studios make movies on Marvel's comic book characters and they're being total garbage. So they have a very good reason to do something right. Robert Downey Jr. is basically Tony Stark. You know, Tony Stark is a womanizer. He's an alcoholic. He's an egotistical maniac in the comic books. But he does redeem himself. And where Robert Downey Jr. was in his point in life, he was Tony Stark. And what more of a perfect choice to play the man who was actually very much so the comic book character in real life. And then Jon Favreau, who is a good director. And what this needed was an emphasis on story and not just focus on action. And he proved that he could do action. So if you put all that stuff together, success was kind of foreseen. But was it foreseen to the degree it has become now? No, I don't think so. I don't think anybody ever saw that. Even when they teased that little end credit scene at the end, I don't think anybody foresaw that. I mean, just think about what this movie brought us. The term cinematic universe is now commonplace, where at the time nobody knew what the hell a cinematic universe was, and nobody even thought of it. Now everybody wants to be a cinematic universe. The end credit scene, I mean, come on. That had been done before, and a few far between though. But this now, when you go see a movie, you stay for after the credits, just about on any movie you go see, and you can thank the Marvel Cinematic Universe for that. And let's not forget, they're in the top 10 movies of all time. The Avengers Endgame is #1. It beat out Avatar, and Avatar had held that record for a while. And there are, I think, 4 or 5. 4, I want to say. I know Infinity War, regular Avenger, Endgame, maybe 4 or 5 movies in the top 10 of all time. Now that's some feat. You know, that you can't take away from that. That is just some feat. And why is that? It's because people love these characters, and nobody in their right minds ever thought anything like this would exist. Maybe the young people who grew like my son, who's 11, who was born a year before Iron Man came out, and the first movie he saw at the movie theater was The Avengers. Maybe he could think something like that could have happened. But people my age never in a million years ever thought this was going to happen. And it's a wondrous sight to behold. So, what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to go rank all 22 movies in the Infinity Saga. Now, I'm not including Spider-Man Far From Home. I've seen Far From Home, and there's a reason for that. I know they say that it technically is the last movie of Phase 3. But that movie deals with a lot of the aftermath of Endgame. And if you look at Marvel's Phase 4, there are a lot more movies or Disney Plus shows that deal with the aftermath of Endgame. Loki is going to deal with the aftermath of Endgame. WandaVision is definitely going to deal with the aftermath of Endgame. Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to deal with the aftermath of Endgame. And I'm pretty sure the Black Widow movie is going to deal with the aftermath of Endgame, besides just being a prequel. So it looks like a lot, if not most, of Phase 4. Even the Eternals can deal with the aftermath of Endgame. So it looks like a lot of Phase 4 is just going to be a lot of it about the ramifications and dealing with the aftermath of Endgame. So going from Iron Man to Endgame, okay? That's what we're doing. Number 2, there will be spoilers, okay? If you haven't seen these, I'm sorry, don't watch it, but there will be spoiling because I'm going to give my thoughts, my likes and dislikes on every movie. And yeah, so spoilers. I also want to say that I do like every movie in the MCU, okay? There are just some I like a lot better. I can watch any one of these. I have watched every one of these multiple times. We will not be including any of the TV shows, Netflix stuff, because none of that fits in here. I know Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and maybe Daredevil a little bit and tried to fit in, but they kind of 86 that idea once they started having disagreements among studio heads with the movies and the television stuff. So no TV show stuff. Also joining me on this review will be my 11-year-old son and my 15-year-old daughter. And they made a list, and after I give my movie, they're going to give their movie in whatever spot I'm on. And now my 11-year-old son, like I said, he was born a year before Iron Man. He doesn't read comic books. He's not a big comic book fan. He does like superheroes. He loves the Lego games. And he knows quite a bit because he plays a lot of those Lego games and stuff like Ultimate Alliance and stuff like that. But if he ever has any questions, he tends to look them up on YouTube about these characters. So he knows a little bit more than I thought he knew. He likes these movies. He can watch them. He has seen almost all of them. Many of them at the theater. There were only like 4 movies he hadn't seen. And then when we watched all these, he saw those 4 for the first time. My 15-year-old daughter is your typical high school student. She likes horror movies more than anything else. But she likes these Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. She doesn't read any of the comics. But she does ask me questions. Are the movies, are they like how they are in the comics? What happened to this person in the comics? That kind of stuff. So... And she had seen every one of the movies. Sometimes she'll go watch on a Put Locker, something if she hadn't seen it, if she's bored. So there is that. But she knows who a lot of these people are, and she does like these movies. So you're going to get a male-female perspective. You're going to get a young-old perspective. And the casual and the hardcore type of perspective. It is because of my love for these movies and my amazement that they were made. And again, young people may not appreciate it, but people my age who like this really appreciate it. And you just can't, if you're not my age and you weren't growing up in the 70s where lame stuff happened and 80s where lame stuff like superhero stuff happened, you really can't appreciate the gravity of this. I mean, I never thought in a million years I would ever see this come to fruition. I never did. Even stuff like, when Star Wars and Jurassic Park and they were able to start working on effects, I still never thought I would see anything like this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to fix and start, and we're going to start with number 22 and work our way down. Now I hope you enjoy it. It's something a little different I want to do. When I do my Marvel Legendary, people seem to like my discussion about the superheroes and villains in those games when I play, because honestly I do know a lot about superheroes. It's mainly the Marvel. I do know some about DC, but mainly Marvel because I have a massive comic book collection. I grew up reading a lot of these heroes. So, and I'm going to be unfiltered. I'm going to tell you what I think about them. Whether it's politically correct or not. I'm going to say that. Okay? So, I hope to see you, and we're going to get started. Be right back. Alright, so my number 22 movie is Iron Man 3. Out of all the movies in the MCU, when I saw it at the theaters, this was the only one I was ever mad when I walked out of the theater. And I know many people consider Hulk the black sheep of the MCU, but I consider this one just as much. If you look at the film, there are not many things that have carried over to the other films. The Iron Patriot idea is completely scrapped after this movie. At the end of this movie, he gets rid of his suits of armor, and kind of hints that he's going to quit being Iron Man, but we all know that's not going to happen. The only thing that really ever carries over from this movie is the fact that he gets his shrapnel removed from his chest. The suit that he wears in this movie, I don't like it very much at all. It's really kind of bland. It just basically flies to him in pieces. I mean, it's not really a great suit. I also found that the part where the helicopters blow or shoot missiles at his house would be very stupid. He's Iron Man. He's publicly figure. He just set a threat out to the Mandarin. You think Jarvis would have told him, hey, there's some missiles coming at you, or that they would restrict helicopters from flying anywhere near the house. Of course, the thing that gets me more mad than anything else is the Mandarin twist. Now, imagine if this were a Batman trilogy, and the first two Batman movies, like the first two Iron Man movies did, teased the Joker. And then you see the previews for the third Batman movie, and the Mandarin is prominent in the trailers, and it makes it look like, oh boy, we're going to finally get that big showdown between Iron Man and his main villain, the Mandarin. And then Iron Man 3 happens, to where it's a big joke. You can tell that Marvel has kind of regretted that when they did the one shot and they made it seem that the Mandarin was actually a real person. It wasn't Trevor Slattery. And that now he's going to be the villain in the new Shang-Chi movie in Phase 4. But still, that's a little too late. Mandarin is Iron Man's main villain, as much as the Joker is Batman's villain. And I think it was handled very poorly, and being a fan of the comics, I was really upset. I was looking forward to him being the villain after they teased him in the first and second movie, and then the previews specifically showed him as a villain, and to come away with that was just terrible. Though I do like this movie in some aspects. I like the fact that War Machine, or Rhodey's given a good prominent role in this movie. I like the fact that Tony Stark has PTSD as an effect from the Avengers movie. And I like it that he's kind of got back to basics, where he has to do without his armor for a little bit and rely more on his tech savvy and intellect. In the end, the fight is pretty good, although I never cared for the extremist people. I mean, well, they can heal and heat you, melt you. I don't know. I find them literally overpowered too much, really, in this movie, and then at the end just kind of thrown away. Being said, with Trevor Slattery, Ben Kingsley does do a great job. He is pretty funny as Trevor. I do like the Trevor character. I just don't like the twist. Imagine if he was the Mandarin, how good it would have been. And Guy Pearce's villain as well, he's bland. What a waste of AIM. AIM is a big organization in the comic books. And again, this is the only time they ever really brought up in the movies. And I just found Guy Pearce boring and just a bland villain. So Iron Man 3 is my number 22nd movie. So Issa, what did you have for your number 22nd movie?
The Hulk.
The Hulk?
Mhm.
CJ,
Same.
what did you have?
Same.
The Hulk. Okay. Well, why did you not like the Hulk? What was it makes it so bad that you didn't just like it?
It was too much of a romance movie, and it just, I don't think Ed Norton was a good Hulk. It barely showed how he became the Hulk. Like, there was a quick montage in the beginning, and that was it.
Okay.
And
Was there anything you liked from it?
no, not really.
Not really. CJ, what about you? What did you not like?
Where do I start?
I don't like the romance in this movie. It is everywhere. Like, anywhere the Hulk is, his girlfriend is, and it just makes the scene just worse. Because, like, he's already done enough illegal things. And, like, she's like, oh, it's okay. We gotta run from the FBI. The villain shows up at the end, and that's about it. The Hulk isn't really a good guy, too. He's pretty much committed a lot of crimes in this movie, and they brush it off because he saves the city.
Okay. Is there anything you liked about the movie?
One thing, and that's Mr. Blue from Lidl, pretty much.
The leader? Yeah. Okay. Alright, so Issa and CJ have the Hulk at 22, and of course I have Iron Man 3 at 22. Next, we're fixing to move on to number 21. Alright, well, as you can see, my number 21 is The Incredible Hulk. And it's usually for the obvious reasons. Many people consider this movie the black sheep of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I do as well. A lot of people say it doesn't fit the Marvel template, and it really doesn't. I think Edward Norton, what could have been if Edward Norton hadn't quit or got fired or whatever happened with him, who knows how the cinematic universe would have looked. I think Edward Norton did a good job as well as he could. I know he had a lot of problems with the film. He wanted the film to be damn near 3 hours and had a lot more stuff in it. But he did a good job. The supporting cast, you know, General Ross, apparently, you know, to connect this film, the Marvel Studios heard that it was kind of a black sheep. So to connect this film, they brought him into the other films, which I thought was a good idea. The Abomination is mentioned in one of those Marvel one-shots where he was supposed to actually be part of the Avengers. But this movie, compared to Ang Lee's Hulk, this movie is a masterpiece. Now my kids, I gave it a hard time. They had never seen Ang Lee's Hulk, and if they saw Ang Lee's Hulk, they would probably agree that this movie is a masterpiece compared to it. This movie's not bad. It's just meh. I mean, they can't do any Hulk movies because Universal's tying up the rights, so they can't progress anything with this. And you know, that's kind of a shame because the Abomination, I actually liked Abomination. He's one of my pluses from this movie. I like Tim Roth. I thought he did a good job all through the movie. I thought the in-action scenes, the in-action fight was pretty good. I liked the Abomination. They could have brought the leader in. You know, they set it up for that. Ty Burrell was Samson, Doc Samson, so he was in here. And, you know, Betty Ross is in here, when she's never mentioned again ever in the MCU, which is kind of sad. This movie is mentioned in the Avengers, where the Hulk talks about last time he was in Harlem, he broke it. So, and if you watch this movie, Shield and Stark Industries is mentioned and shown throughout the movie. So this movie came out a couple months after Iron Man, and the end credit scene with Tony Stark in there is trying to connect it. You can tell they were trying to connect a good cinematic universe, and you know, maybe this is a low point in early MCU, but it's not as bad as everybody makes it out to be, in my opinion. Now the effects, I think the effects do lack, even especially for its time. If you watch Iron Man, the effects in Iron Man are bang up really good compared to some of the effects in here. And I do agree that this movie, it tends to be boring in certain spots. The romance between him and Betty is a little dry. I don't mind them glossing over the origin. I think we all know the origin. So the Incredible Hulk, what are you going to do? Okay, so that's my number 21. CJ, what do you want to say real quick?
I tried to give this movie a second chance, and I think that I agree it isn't horrible like Issa makes it out to be, but I think calling it above average is kind of too much.
Okay. Okay, well, what's your number 21?
I know a lot of people aren't going to like me for this, but it's Thor 1
The first Thor.
and Thor 2 because I gave them both the same rating, 5.
But which one is better?
I put Thor 1 below that because
Okay.
I don't know why. Thor 1 and Thor 2. I think Thor 1 now. Thor 1 it has some good action, yes, but there's a few problems with it. I didn't like the romance between Jane Foster and Thor. I mean, I think the romance is actually better on Thor 2. Loki is a good villain for this. But then there's a whole bunch of forgettable characters like Jane's family and a lot of people who helped Thor defeat those weird ice people. The villain is Loki and the Frost Giants, but mostly Loki. And I think this was a good start for Loki in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
It played him out pretty good. And I think the battle in wherever they are in the movie, I think that was a pretty good battle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I give this 5 because it's not as good as any of the Iron Man movies, but I think Thor 1 is a little bit better than Thor 2. I'll get into Thor 2 next.
Okay. What is your number 21?
So, my number 21 is actually the first Iron Man.
Oh, really?
Oh my
Yeah. It's kind of because, like, right after I watched it, I, like, forgot the whole movie. It's just, like, really forgettable to me. It's really good, like, the beginning of it's really good.
Yeah.
But I just didn't really care for it as much
A lot of the early
as I
MCU
like the other movies that are from early Marvel.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the early MCU movies that aren't Iron Man pretty much are pretty forgettable.
I rated it, I rated Iron Man a 6,
Yeah.
but that's like one of the lower numbers that I have on my list. I never rated anything
Okay.
much lower.
All right. So my number 21 is the Incredible Hulk. CJ's number 21 is the first Thor.
Yeah.
Okay. And Ace's number 21 is the first Iron Man. Wow. Okay. All right.
It's Issa's opinion.
Yeah. Okay, coming around at number 20. My number 20 is Thor 2, The Dark World. This, of course, is considered by many to be one of the worst MCU movies. I tend to agree, although I still like it. I don't think it's unwatchable. The things that I like about this movie is the best part to me is the budding camaraderie between Loki and Thor. It's kind of like almost like a buddy comedy at a certain point. I like that. I also like Rene Russo's character as Frida a lot better in this one than I did the first one. And I think Heimdall and the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif are fleshed out a little bit more. I also like Eric Selvig a lot in this movie, and I tend to like the final battle with the part with Thor's hammer going from place to place, trying to follow him and Malekith going to the different worlds. Other than that, this movie is very. I think they took a bunch of wrong turns with this. Patty Jenkins was supposed to direct this movie. She directed the Wonder Woman movie, and that turned out to be a big hit. And you know what? I bet the Marvel Studios people wish they had Patty Jenkins direct this movie. I would have liked to see where this movie would have been with her as director. Because this is considered one of the weakest. A lot of problems with this movie. Odin acts like an idiot in this movie. The villains are the big problem. If you read the comics, you know Curse and Malekith are really actually pretty cool Thor villains. Not so in this movie, and I think one of the reasons is because Thor should be more of a fantasy character, and as whereas Thor deals with fantasy type things, frost giants, dark elves, medieval type worlds, and they made the dark elves and Curse and everybody that like science fiction type in nature. It just why do you have to make the elves and spaceships and cloaking and all that kind of stuff? It should be a more fantasy thing. We have enough science fiction in the MCU. Let's keep some fantasy around, like in the first Thor where you had the frost giants, or in Thor Ragnarok where you had Surtur and his fire demons. So I think this one took a big misstep going the science fiction route. I also think I'm not into, just like everybody else, the romance between Jane Foster and Thor is not that good. It should be actually between Thor and Lady Sif. I like her a lot better. The movie just at some points is just boring. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It's boring, weak villains, and just a terrible direction they went in with it. Although, I don't think it's as bad as everybody makes it out to be. But yes, Malekith is... it's debatable whether he's the worst villain in the MCU. And I tend to kind of agree that he is. And I think they got the ether wrong, too. I mean, they kind of ignored it being this kind of liquid-like thing up until Endgame. So that's my number 20, Thor: The Dark World. Issa, what is your number 20?
Y'all about to be mad. It's actually Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Spider-Man: Homecoming?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow, what did you... Okay.
There's actually a lot of things I like about the movie, but it's just not one of my favorite movies.
Okay.
Like, some of the characters, I don't like how they have the characters. Like, I don't like how Mary Jane isn't Mary Jane. Like, she's not even in it. It's like... And there's so much like wrong with it that I don't like it. Like, I think Aunt May is supposed to be like this kind of old lady type.
Yeah.
And they just put her as this young woman, and I think it doesn't really fit that well.
Lisa,
Okay.
what did you do? Did you put Thor 2?
Alright, well, hold on now. What's your number 20?
All Thor: The Dark World.
Thor 2, huh?
Yeah.
Alright, so tell me, let me sit up here. What did you like about Thor 2?
It's better than the first one.
Okay.
That's, again, I like most of the points that you say.
What did you not like?
I didn't like the villains. I feel like they could have done a lot more with Curse.
Because you have Curse and Malekith in your Lego Marvel superheroes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and Curse's color scheme is way different, and I understand that. I feel like they could have done way more with Malekith and Curse.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if they were hinting to me. I don't remember a lot of stuff because that's what this movie is, forgettable.
Okay.
Because it's pretty much...
I think it messed up with Heimdall too.
Yeah.
Him not being able to see the Dark Elves because they have a cloaking device is kind of
Sci-fi.
And it's kind of dumb to me, but you know, that's just me. Spider-Man: Homecoming, huh?
Also,
Yeah. I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think he's one of the better Spider-Mans that have been in the outrageous movies so far. And I think Far From Home will be better than...
okay, one last thing. This movie is nowhere near funnier than Thor 1. Because I don't even think I only remember a few scenes that were kind of funny in this. This movie wasn't that funny, and I feel like Marvel movies have to have three things: emotion, action, and comedy.
Okay. Alright, so my number 20 is Thor: The Dark World. CJ's number 20 is Thor: The Dark World. And Spider-Man: Homecoming is Issa's number 20. Very controversial list so far.
It's actually rated a 6 out of 10.
Alright.
I just thought some of it was boring, and I didn't really like Michael Keaton's character, but I love Michael Keaton. So.
Okay. Alright, well, my number 19 on the list is Black Panther. I wasn't too impressed with this movie. I know it's up for several Academy Awards, Oscars, whatever, but we all know the real reason why it was up for all that stuff. All because of the racial component and stuff like that. But honestly, this movie is a good movie, and I'm going to discuss what I liked about it first. First of all, the acting and the actors in this movie are excellent. Chadwick Boseman is, I can't imagine anybody else ever being a Black Panther. I like Angela Bassett, I like Suri, I like Denai Guerrera, and it's great to see Denai Guerrera be a badass again after they've wasted her Michonne character in The Walking Dead. The world building in this movie is fantastic. Wakanda itself is its own character. And you get a sense that it could be a real place, a real nation in Africa. I also like Martin Freeman as Agent Ross, but he's a little bit different in here than he is in Civil War. So maybe they tried to make him more likable and better. The highlight of this movie to me, and also its big downfall of its movie to me, is its villains. I like Claw and I like Killmonger, and these are two of the better villains in the MCU. And you have two top name talents for this movie, Michael B. Jordan and Andy Serkis. And you proceed to kill them both off, which to me is a horrible mistake. You have two top level actors. You want to keep them in the MCU. You want to keep them. You want to keep them around.
Wasn't he in Space Jam?
No, this is different. Michael Jordan. Michael B. Jordan is the guy who plays Killmonger. Killmonger is one of the better villains in the MCU, and you kill him off at the end. Andy Serkis' Claw is one of the better villains in the MCU, especially the way he is in this movie, and you kill him off in the end. I don't understand that. That to me is a big mistake of this movie, and it I kind of was a little mad after I saw this movie when realizing they killed them both off, and it kind of ticked me off a little bit, and I was like, what a waste. Another big problem for me on this movie was the end fight. The end fight CGI looks terrible. I don't know what the hell was going on. The first 2/3 of the movie, the CGI is great. It's like they ran out of money or ran out of time, or like, look, we got to get this movie out by February. Push this out. Well, we're not done with the end fight. Well, too bad. You're going to have to make do with what you want. And the end fight looks terrible. It looks like PlayStation 2 graphics. I mean, it looks very bad. So, that is another thing that bothered me. Another thing that bothered me was they never... Now, if you are familiar with the comics, you know this. But if you are not familiar with the comics, then you don't know this. How is metal that is technologically maybe a little bit advanced, how does that make the people there so smart and able to advance their nation like that? Did the god Bast, when they showed him the way to become the Black Panther and unite the tribes, did he make them smart? Did Did it give them intelligence? And they never really explain how it is that this place, since it has a large deposit of vibranium, made the people smart enough to go ahead and be technological advanced to build up a nation like that. I mean, you know, there's nations on Earth that have large deposits of plutonium or gold, and that doesn't make them any more the smarter. Now I know why in the comics, so I'm just a little bit of a nitpick, but I think they could have done a better job explaining that element in the movie for people who just didn't know. I mean, but other than that, I think it was a good attempt by Ryan Coogler. I think he did a good job with the movie. I just have problems with it, mainly killing the villains and the two actors who should stay in the MCU. And I think that really took me off, and that make me a little bit more biased towards this movie. And again, the end fight is just bad, just terribly bad. So Black Panther, I think it's overrated in many aspects. So that's just my opinion. I'm going to go ahead and rate it number 19. CJ, what did you rate for your number 19?
Avengers Endgame. I'm actually in a good category now. Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel? Okay.
Captain Marvel is an average movie. I think I like the effects. The effects are pretty good. I like young Nick Fury. I think they did pretty good in making how, like, I think they did a pretty good job on, like, Captain Marvel and her backstory. Now, it doesn't make that much sense, but, still, it's entertaining. I can give it that. It's funny in some parts, but there's a lot of errors with it. Like, how did Nick Fury know that Nick Fury? How did Nick Fury know his shield when in Iron Man 1 he didn't know what to call it?
Right.
And I don't believe that goose, that cat, would have made that scratch that gave Nick Fury the eye patch. Other than that, I think Captain Marvel, pretty good movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your number 19, Issa?
It's actually Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3, okay. You got anything to add to my critique of Iron Man 3?
I think, yeah, I agree a lot. The main reason it's actually higher is because I like the end part with Pepper, and also, I think I like the parts with Rhodey being included, Pepper being more included. Obviously, though, I don't like the Mandarin twist, and I think they could have done better with the villains and stuff like that.
Okay. Alright, so my 19 is Black Panther. CJ's 19 is Captain Marvel.
And I put it in the okay category.
Okay. And Isabella's 19 is Iron Man 3. Okay, my number 18, as you can see, is Captain Marvel. Let's just get the elephant right out of the room right now. I really don't like Brie Larson. I think the stuff she said prior to the movie's release that made such a big controversy was stupid of her to say that. I also think that Disney made this movie too big to fail. Put it out between two great movies, Infinity War and Endgame. It made you have to see this movie because of the end credit scene in Infinity War. And they booked it during a month when nothing really was coming out. And I do believe that they were buying up tickets to make this movie seem more popular than it did. So that's my opinion on that. That being said, I actually like this movie. And I actually like Brie Larson as Captain Marvel in this movie. I think she did a good job. If you watch the first trailers, many people made a lot of hubbub about her acting skills in the trailers. I think she did a good job. I like the 90s throwback. I like her and her banter between her and the young Nick Fury. I like the Kree stuff. I'm a big fan of in the early '90s when Silver Surfer was a comic and Jim Starlin was writing it, he brought in a lot of Kree stuff, and I like the Kree Star Force. I like Captain Atlas and Dr. Nirvana, and to see them in this movie was a nice little. It gave me a smile to see them in this movie. I like it. I think the effects for this movie are good. I like the fact that Ronan makes an appearance to clean things up. And I like Jude Law's character very much so. The problems with this movie are the writing for it is terrible. I don't know, the directors and the writers for this movie, it's like they never watched another MCU movie before. Or they were too focused on their man-hating stuff with this movie. And yeah, this movie does have some feministic tendencies where every man is through her life is just telling her she's sorry, she can't do this, she can't do that. She's the lady getting picked on, blah blah blah. And it's nauseating. It almost breaks the movie. It just comes short enough to where it doesn't ruin the movie. If they had not focused as much on crap like that and focused more on story and continuity, this movie could have been a hell of a lot better. It could have earned its $1 billion mark, in my opinion. I think Annette Bening was horribly miscast. I think she's terrible in this movie. I don't like the fact that she's Captain Marvel when Captain Marvel in the comics is a male. And he's actually a really good superhero. He's one of the only few superheroes who ever stayed dead. And, I think she was horribly miscast.
They should have done that with this movie.
I think a lot of the stuff, like CJ said, where Nick Fury's mentioning S.H.I.E.L.D., but they haven't come up with a name for it in Iron Man 1, is a big continuity error. I think the way Nick Fury gets his eye slashed is like they never even watched Winter Soldier, and is pretty stupid. I don't care for Goose the Cat. I think Goose the Cat is dumb. I think him swallowing the Tesseract is stupid, and they never explain that gap. If you watch Captain America, the First Avenger, S.H.I.E.L.D. has the Tesseract at that point in time because they find it at the bottom of the ocean. So you have to assume at some point in time Wendy Lawson got the Tesseract from S.H.I.E.L.D., was able to use it for her little light speed engine, and then but they never allude to the fact.
Oh my god, you're right. I didn't even notice.
And why do the Skrulls need a light speed engine anyways? Every other civilization is doing light speed jumps in every other movie. Hell, the Skrulls start out on that refugee homeworld when they capture Captain Marvel, and then and then she wakes up on the ship and she's hovering over Earth. So how did they get there in that short of a time? They had to have light speed, so that just makes no sense whatsoever. The Skrulls being good guys, I have no problem with it, but you screwed up the opportunity to do Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion is one of the best modern day Marvel comic storyline crossovers, and you kind of screw that up by making Skrulls good guys now, when Skrulls have been bad guys in the past. The Kree have been bad and good in the past, and Skrulls for the most part have been bad. They've been good on a few occasions, but they've been bad most of the time. And to do that twist to try to be clever, that's fine, but you kind of screwed up any opportunity to do a Secret Invasion. So I think that was kind of a big mistake. Other than that, I thought Ben Mendelsohn did a great job as Talos, and I thought the Skrulls were done, pretty decently well. Another problem is I would have liked to see more of the Kree Star Force. I think they should have had more of them in there. I would have liked to see more of Kree. I thought Kree was interesting. The Hala world was interesting. The Kree civilization's interesting. The Kree Star Force and team dynamic is really interesting. I was mad that they killed off, or seemingly killed off, my favorite one of them, which is Nirvana. She was probably the one given the most personality, even though they weren't given a chance to shine in this movie, which I think is a mistake. Like I said, I like the Kree Star Force. She was my favorite one, and I think Gemma Chan did an excellent job. I hope I hope she's not dead, and I hope Gemma Chan comes back in Captain Marvel too. And that kind of, that stuff. She did a good job. I liked her. The powers is the big problem with her. We all know it. How come Jude Law didn't get any powers? He was standing next to the ship when the thing blew up. Her powers, they got to figure this out. They just can't make her all powerful, do all everything, or she's going to keep getting hated like Rey in Star Wars. They got to fix this. They got to do some kind of thing where, her powers are starting to run out the more she uses them, like Spawn and that kind of stuff. And they got to give her some limitations, because her just to be all powerful is not going to cut it. It's okay for this, but it's not going to cut it in the long run. She's already hated enough as it is, and you're just going to make things worse. Another pet peeve I have was the little girl in this movie. No little girl acts like that. Let's just get that out of the way. No little kid wants their mom to go in outer space and die, risk their life and die for stupid reasons. Kids just don't act like that. Kids want their parents with them. And that little kid was just, I think it was just the writers thinking, hey, we don't have kids, but this is how we want our kids to act, so let's write this kid like that. The kid was just too smart, too uppy, too peppy, too, just too everything kids aren't for this movie. I do hope they do something with Rambeau, make her Photon. She was originally Captain Marvel after the original Captain Marvel passed on. She was with the Avengers. She was a powerhouse with the Avengers. She was very good. So I hope they do something with that. Word is that they are. She's going to show up in the Wanda Vision TV show maybe. So that's Captain Marvel. Another big plus, I will say, the music. This is probably one of my top scores for all Marvel movies. This movie had a good synth beat for the space stuff and a good operatic orchestral type stuff for the other fights. I thought the music for this movie was excellent. I love it.
I like it
The lady who did the score for this movie, I can't remember her name. She did a good job. I hope Marvel keeps her around and lets her do more, because she did a great score for this movie. Captain Marvel doesn't deserve a lot of the hate that it is overhated on. It deserves criticism. This movie needs to be criticized because it has a lot of mistakes. It could have been a great movie, but they let agenda and continuity errors and just stupid other little nitpick things ruin it from being a great movie to just a good, okay movie. Hopefully they'll do better with part 2. So that's my Captain Marvel. What's yours?
Go to East Falls.
Okay, so what's yours? 18.
Mine is Thor, the first Thor, I think. Yeah, mine's the first Thor. So, I liked, I think the villain was Loki. I could not remember that much about this movie. That's why it is so low, because it's very forgettable. But I think they did well with the cast, as much as I can remember. And Tom Hiddleston as Loki is top.
Okay.
Good choice.
CJ, what's your number 18?
I put Iron Man 3 as an okay movie.
Iron Man 3.
Okay.
I know we said a lot about Iron 3. Anything you want to add? Did you like the Mandarin twist?
No.
No?
Didn't like it.
Okay.
But I do like the Trevor Scott.
Trevor
Mandarin.
Slattery guy?
Yes.
Okay.
He's honestly really funny.
Yeah, he's really funny.
Also, that in scene in the big construction place.
Yeah.
I think that was a good fight scene. I don't know, in popular opinions. And I think that Pepper Potts becoming one of those flame people, like, they just solved that by going like, okay, get surgery, you're no longer a flame poison. Aldrich Killian also, he just doesn't seem that threatening because of the way he looks. He just looks so ridiculous. his hairstyle. Other than that, I think the movie is the same as y'all said.
Alright. So my 18 is Captain Marvel, CJ's 18 is Iron Man 3, and Issa's 18 is the first Thor. Alright, so number 17 for me is Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't know what to really say about this movie. It just feels lackluster. I do like Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp. I think she's great. I, of course, like Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. I like his, Michael Pena and his crew. I like Michelle Pfeiffer being the original Wasp. That was great. I love to see that. That was pretty good. I think the problem with this movie is the lackluster villains. It just Ghost was really boring to me. I'm sorry, and the
Black Goliath.
No, what's his name? The organized crime criminal guy. It was just a bunch of thug mobsters trying to take down Ant-Man and the Wasp. It just kind of diminishes them, and it just doesn't. I don't know. It just kind of brings them down. They're superheroes. They shouldn't even break a sweat or even have to deal with them for more than 5 minutes. I think the action's good. The comedy is good. And everybody does a good job. The effects are pretty damn good. I do like the car chase. I just think that this movie, like I said, it just didn't seem like there was any real threat to any of the heroes. It just seemed very lackluster. And I think for a sequel, you want to try, to outdo what the first one did, but do it bigger and better. And I don't think this one did that. That's my problem with this movie. So Ant-Man and the Wasp for me is number 17. CJ, what's your number 17?
Captain America 1.
Captain America, the first Avenger. Okay, well, sit over here. Give me your thoughts on the first Captain America.
Oops, I forgot. Captain America 1. It's a pretty good origin story for Captain America. Good characters. A problem I have is that I don't know how they made this technology in technically 1940 something. It doesn't make sense. But I like the villain, Red Skull. He's very cool.
Okay.
Actually, I think the villains are what makes this movie so good in my opinion, because Red Skull is pretty good, and that weird looking guy with the top hat.
Yeah, Emil Zoloff.
Yeah, I think he's pretty memorable.
Okay.
Also, another thing, the action in this movie, I think, is probably one of the best for the old Marvel movies. I don't think it's as good as Iron Man 1, but Captain America 1, pretty dang close.
Okay. Issa, what's your 17?
So I actually have Thor: The Dark World.
Okay.
I actually like this movie. A lot of people don't like it, but I actually like it. I mainly like it because of Loki and Thor's relationship. I like the idea of the Aether, however you say it. I think the villains were not very good, but I like the whole, oh no, Loki's dead thing. And then at the end, it reveals he's not dead. He turned into Odin, like shape-shifted into Odin real quick. I think they did better with the characters this time. I think they included them more.
Okay.
And I think the effects were pretty good, I think.
So you like Thor 2 better than the first Thor, definitely. Yeah. Okay. All right, so what was that? Number 17?
Yes.
Number 17 for me was Ant-Man and the Wasp. For Issa, it was Thor 2, The Dark World. And for CJ, it was Captain America, The First Avenger.
Personally.
Alright, my number 16 is the first Thor. I've never been a big Thor fan in the comics. I always thought he was okay, but I never went out of my way to collect his comics. He's one of the few superheroes I never really collected. And I always thought Loki was, okay. This movie did something which I didn't think it was going to be able to do. It made me like Thor and Loki a hell of a lot better than I liked them in the comics. And that's a testament to how good this movie I think is. It's a great fish out of water story. It's got a good cosmic vibe to it. It's got a good fantasy vibe with the frost giants. Of course, Tom Hiddleston nails it as Loki, although I think he would get better. Same thing with Chris Hemsworth. He nails it as Thor, but I also think he would get better. Thank God he got rid of his dyed eyebrows. The fish out of water story is pretty good, and it does add a good comedy aspect to this movie. I just find that Thor is somewhat of a disinteresting character to me still, a little bit. However, I do like the way this movie went towards a Shakespearean type family drama, and it just feels a little bit more of a low budget. I mean, you can tell that the city in the desert is a made-up city. It's especially made for this movie that is not very big. Yeah, okay, they spent all their budget on the FX for Asgard. So, you know, not bad for an origin movie. Definitely would get better. Although I do think this one is better than Thor 2, The Dark World. So my number 16 is Thor.
I have something to say. I will admit the effects are pretty good for an early Marvel movie.
Okay. So what's your number 16?
We're going into the good category, everyone. Who didn't trick on that one? Guardians 1. The first.
God, the first Guardians of the Galaxy?
I have to.
Okay, here, you sit up here.
Yeah.
Okay, what did you not like about that Guardians movie? I mean, why is it so low on your list?
I don't know. I guess I just find Guardians 2 to be better.
Okay.
I know a lot of people don't like Guardians 2. I do like this movie. That's why it's the first one in the good category, and I think it has aged well. But something that I do have a problem with is that I think has a little bit too much comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not too bad of a problem because it's Guardians, and I'm pretty sure Guardians was the first major comedic movie. Like, yeah. But it does have good action. It is very funny, and it has a few emotional scenes. That's what I'm ranking these by. Also, I'm ranking these by score. So from now on, all of the movies are rather 7 or up.
Okay.
So that's why I just feel
A lot
like
of
there's a whole
controversial
bunch,
placements on these lists, but okay.
I feel like there's a whole bunch of better movies.
Isabella, what's your number 16?
It's actually Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2, okay.
From what I can remember about the movie, this one was actually my favorite. Just the fact that Iron Man 1 was so forgettable to me, and that Iron Man 3 was a kind of a disaster, but only halfway. I think Iron Man 2 is a good early Marvel movie, and I think it includes some really good fight scenes.
Alright. So that's number 16. What?
Yeah, I just want to say that everything now on is 7 or up.
Okay. So number 16 is, for me, is Thor. Number 16 for CJ is
Okay.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
And number 16 for Issa is Iron Man 2. Alright, my number 15 is the first Ant-Man. I think Paul Rudd nails it as Scott Lang. And yeah, I couldn't imagine anybody else being Ant-Man. Everybody should know the trouble behind this movie's production work. You know, it's supposed to be a standalone movie from Edgar Wright, not have anything to do with it. But then the MCU started taking off, and they made the wise decision to say, hey, no, we want this movie to be part of the MCU, and we want to keep it that way. And of course, that was creative differences with Edgar. So, now, you know, there we go. I like the small time feel of this movie. I love the effects. The effects are fantastic. This movie could not have been made decently some years back. So that just goes to show you how great special effects have come. I like the supporting cast. I like Michael Douglas. I like everybody, but again, the villain. I just think the villain's a little weak in this. I think Corey Stoll does a good job with what he can, but I just think Yellow Jacket's a weak villain. I do like that this is a heist type movie, and it has a different feel. So that's what makes it stand out for me. That, the effects, and of course the great performance by Paul Rudd. And it doesn't hurt that the Falcon makes a cameo appearance. So that's my number 15, Ant-Man. CJ, what's your number 15?
Sorry about this. Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2, okay.
It's not better than but bad placement. Iron Man 2, I think. Iron Man 2 is just one. I like the villain, Whiplash. It's pretty good. I like both villains actually. Austin Powell, Jonathan Powell.
Justin Hammer.
Justin Hammer, dang it. Austin Powell. Then Iron Man suit, I think it's better in this movie than in part 1. I am like most of the scenes in this movie. It's a pretty funny movie too. But that the racing scene is pretty good. The final scene and the scene with Iron Man versus War Machine, I think those are pretty good scenes, and the action just makes it a whole bunch better because we already had Iron Man 1 and the action on that was pretty good. But I think the effects in this one are better than Iron Man 1. They might look the same, but I think yeah.
Okay. Isabella, what's your number 15?
So actually, to add on to CJ's, I actually got confused with the villain. I mistaked it for somebody else. I actually did like the villain in Iron Man 2. I think it is one of the better villains in the Iron Man.
You about Whiplash?
Yeah, the Iron Man series. I think that was a really good decision. And he looks like Danny Trejo, and I like Danny Trejo. Well, my number 15 is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Okay.
So I think we stand pretty similarly. I think the problem with both of the Ant-Man movies is the villains are both at the same level. I don't think they're. It's like you're watching the same movie, just like a little different, a different situation.
Mm-hmm.
But Ant-Man and the Wasp, I really like. Michelle Pfeiffer, she's one of my favorite actresses, and Michael Douglas, and all of them are so good in this movie. And I think that Ant-Man and the Wasp is a really funny movie too. I really like the girl who plays Ghost. I think she did a good job. I just think they could have done more with her villain character.
Okay. So in the Ant-Man, you like Ant-Man and the Wasp less than the first Ant-Man?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Alright, so my number 15 is Ant-Man. Issa's number 15 is Ant-Man and the Wasp, and CJ's number 15 was Iron Man 2. Alright. Alright, number 14 for me is Captain America, the First Avenger. I've always liked Captain America. Mainly, I've always liked the Red Skull. I think the Red Skull is a top-notch villain. I think Hugo Weaving did an excellent job as Red Skull. I think the Red Skull is fantastic in this movie. I also like Emil Zoloff. And I just like the origin story of Captain America. Who doesn't like the origin story of Captain America? It's a great story. I'm glad they put the Cosmic Cube in here. It's named the Tesseract, but it's the Cosmic Cube in the comics. You know, my only real problem with this is I feel that this could have been a longer movie. I think they rushed through his origin story a little bit too much. That fighting montage through World War II, I thought they could have did better than that. Some of the effects are obvious green screen effects in this movie. This movie shows it a little bit more than some of the other early ones. I guess maybe this movie was rushed a little bit. Other than that, I wish they would have got more into his. I guess this goes to deal with the montage thing, but I like his. What are they? Howling Commandos. I like his Howling Commandos, and I think it's much better. I think the Howling Commandos are pretty good, and I wish they would have spent more time on them. But other than that, you know, it's one of the earlier Marvel movies, a pretty good one. I really like it, and you know, don't mistake this place on this list. I mean, this Captain America trilogy is the best trilogy of the MCU movies. So this being where it's at is no slight to it. Great movie all around. Just a few minor flaws. CJ, what's your number 14?
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
All right. Anything you want to add to Ant-Man and the Wasp that we haven't said already?
No.
No?
Other than Black Panther.
Okay.
Awesome.
The villains?
The villains, yeah. The villains, again, aren't good. Ghost isn't really. And that other guy is just your tax man.
Okay.
That's it. That's all he is, a tax man.
Okay. And your number 14?
It's actually Age of Ultron.
Okay.
So,
Well,
Age of Ultron is actually rated a 7 for me. I actually really like Age of Ultron. My favorite thing about it is Scarlet Witch. I think that she is a really cool character and one of my favorite female characters of the Marvel Universe. Mainly because she's actually really powerful. I thought that the whole idea of let me actually take back what I was about to say. I actually really like this movie because it adds horror into it with Ultron in the beginning and the whole no strings on me thing. That was actually a good like horror moment for them, and I actually like what Ultron's kind of like in the beginning, but I think he gets like I just think he's kind of off later on in the movie. And obviously the Avengers, I like them. They're just the Avengers. I like the whole thing. Obviously Quicksilver is not Evan Peters because the whole thing, but I actually like what happens with him. How he dies, like protecting Hawkeye and the little boy. And I actually really like that part. So.
Okay. Is there anything you don't like about the movie besides Ultron towards the end?
Yeah, I don't like Tony's attitude in this movie. I think he's a lot more like rude, you know, and bitter in this movie than he is in the other movies.
Okay.
And I don't like how they kind of like rip apart in this movie. Like, I don't like how they kind of stop being a team for like a minute because of all that. I think this is the movie with the hammer and they all try and lift the hammer.
Yeah.
I really like that part.
Okay.
And the whole thing about Captain America almost lifting the hammer. I thought that was really cool. I don't like Hydra's thing in this movie. Are they in the movie? I don't remember.
No, that's like
I don't like the extreme amount of robots and the use of the little Tesseract staff thing. I don't like that. I think Ultron would have been cooler if they had done something different with him.
Okay. Alright, so my number 14 is Captain America, the First Avenger. Isa's number 14 is Avengers Age of Ultron. And CJ's number 14 was Ant-Man and the Wasp. Alright, number 13 for me is the first Iron Man. What can you say that hasn't been said about this movie? It began it all. Came out of nowhere in a sea of comic book movies coming out around that time that were just god-awful. Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. You could never see it anyways. It birthed the cinematic universe. You know, it's a great movie. I know a lot of people have this movie higher, much better placement on their list. To me, this movie just compared to some of the newer things just hasn't aged as good. I know they put an emphasis on story, which I'm happy about that. But this is the beginning of Tony Stark, and I like Tony Stark evolved more along to where he would end up. I also don't think Jeff Bridges is a great villain as Ironmonger. It's just a typical, hey, I'm armor villain, but I'm bigger, I'm badder. And I think a lot of the movie, there's just really no threats to Iron Man in this movie, to be honest with you, until the end when it's Ironmonger. Rest of the movie is great, The part where he escapes the cave is probably some of the best in the MCU. But like I said, I think they've gone on to perfect it and done better with Iron Man. So that's why that's my placement on this list. But, you know, I can never fail to not watch this movie. This movie always makes me smile when I watch it. And it's because I know what comes from this movie. Alright, so what's yours, CJ?
Avengers 1, nah. Ant-Man.
The first Ant-Man. Alright.
I actually,
Alright, where are we at? 13?
Yeah, 13.
Okay.
I have some stuff you guys didn't say. I think that a lot of the characters in here are actually memorable. Like, his Luis one.
Yeah.
That's me, Luis Despacito. I really like Hank Pym in this movie. I think he's a good kind of like teacher.
Mentor.
Yeah. There's a few bad things, like how, again, I don't like the Yellow Jacket that much. But like, what other villain would they pick? The Beetle? Pretty much I have a lot of things of what you guys said. Great effects, the actions. I think the action is done better since he can shrink and grow.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't grow in this movie, he doesn't grow at all. Also, it's kind of sad in some parts, like in the moment where he's in the quantum realm. Which is kind of weird because, as we know in Endgame, time doesn't work that way in the quantum realm, so he should be like a few seconds after he went into the quantum realm. He should have gone back. Yeah, pretty much,
Issa, you're number 13.
Okay, so I have Captain America, the first Captain America.
Okay.
I liked pretty much all the characters. You know, the villain was really good, but I don't like the montages or the CG. And little Captain America's like haunts me in my nightmares. It's just like so creepy. I don't know why. I mean, I think them bringing Bucky back like a long time later is a very good idea. Bringing him back as the Winter Soldier.
Okay. Alright, so my number 13, which is probably going to cause a stir, is Iron Man. CJ's number 13 is the first Ant-Man, and Issa's number 13 is the first Captain America. Alright, my number 12 is Doctor Strange. I've always liked Doctor Strange as a comic book character. Especially being a Ghost Rider fan, him and Doctor Strange have kind of butt heads and teamed up several times. I think Benedict Cumberbatch is Doctor Strange. I couldn't see anybody else playing it. He does such an excellent job. I like the effects in this movie. I like where this movie went with the whole mystic side. It was about time Marvel had done that, and they did a good job with it. I think Scott Derrickson, being a horror director, was a good choice for this movie. And I like Dormammu. Dormammu doesn't ever get enough credit, but he is a big baddie. I mean, he's somebody to take seriously, and I'm glad they brought him into this movie. My problems with this movie are the casting. Mads Mikkelsen is a great actor, and to just kind of throw him away and as a throwaway villain, I can't even remember what his damn name is in this movie, and I've seen this movie several times, is just a waste. He should have been Baron Mordo, and the other guy, the guy who played Baron Mordo, should have been his character, the bad guy in this movie. They got Baron Mordo all wrong. Baron Mordo is always been an egotistical, power-hungry type person. That is not who he is in this movie. They got him wrong. I don't know what it is with some of their casting during this era, but they got their casting all wrong. He should not be Baron Mordo. Mads Mikkelsen should be Baron Mordo, and he should have been the bad guy who we never see again after this movie, and they should have kept Mads Mikkelsen around for the next Doctor Strange. Big mistake on their part, in my opinion, and that's kind of what does it for me with this. I do like Tilda Swinton. I've always liked Tilda Swinton. I think she's a great actress, and I like her in this movie. I know there was a lot of controversy about her being the ancient one who's actually a Middle Eastern type person, I mean an Asian person. I can understand where some people would get mad, but honestly, if you could hire Tilda Swinton, I would have. And, you know, she did a bang-up job, and I think that controversy kind of went away after people saw her. So, my number 12 is the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange.
I have something to say.
What?
Never mind. I'm gonna keep this until.
Okay, well, what's your number 12?
I said you were gonna hate me for this. I have Black Panther number 12.
Okay.
I don't know. I think that this is a very different Marvel film, and I think that's what makes it so good. Because most Marvel films either take place in the city or in the neighborhood, but this one takes place out in Africa, but also in a city, which I don't like. The villain, they killed both of the good villains off. Also, I don't like the high tech, because Black Panther's suit is pretty overpowered. If it gets damaged, that helps him, because then he can do that shockwave thing.
Yeah.
And kinetic energy thing.
Yeah, kind of like Captain Marvel. I think he needs like something to do. Like his suit will get damaged over time, and eventually he must replace it. I like Shuri in it. She's pretty funny. She's the comic relief of the movie, because this movie isn't that funny, but she kind of makes up for it. The other characters, I don't remember any of their names, but I don't think they have names. They probably do.
What about Klaus? The villain that
Claw.
with no arm. Oh yeah, Claw.
Yeah. I think he
was
did.
good, kind of
I
good.
think I like how he was in Age of Ultron, so they brought him back for this movie. He's really good in this movie. I think he's better than in Age of Ultron because, well, he's a threat now. He's actually pretty strong. He has that arm cannon thing, but I think they need to kind of make Wakandan civilization less strong. They should have done that.
Okay.
Because, like, Black Panther's suit pretty much is Iron Man's suit, but without all the fancy abilities and claws.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, what's your number 12?
Civil War, actually.
Oh, man, okay. Go ahead.
I actually have Civil War as a 7 out of 10. I do like the movie. I just don't like the idea of them like all going up against each other. I think they would work better as friends and stuff. You know, like that type of relationship with the movie. I do like how they bring everyone together, like Spider-Man, Ant-Man, like a whole bunch of people are in this movie. I love that about the movie. I love just the comedy between Scott Lang and Peter Parker and Captain America and all of them. And I can actually see both sides. I can see like why they would think this and why they would think this. I just don't like the whole part like how they like get mad at each other and beat each other up. Like I get Tony being mad about his parents and stuff, but I think it was all Captain America's fault for knowing and not telling him in the first place.
So whose side were you on?
I think I was on.
In the movie release, she was on Tony's.
Well, whose side would you pick? Captain America's or Iron Man's side?
Who had
No, I mean the idea.
That's all you care.
I actually can't pick a side because I think they're both right.
Okay.
I do think that the government should not have total control over where they go and what they do, but I also think they shouldn't be destroying a whole bunch of stuff and getting innocent people killed just because like a building fell or something while they were fighting.
Okay. Alright, so that was number 12. My number 12 is Doctor Strange. Issa's is Captain America Civil War, and CJ's was Black Panther. Alright, number 11 for me is Iron Man 2. I know this is going to cause a little stir, but this one mainly is because of sentimental reasons, really. This was the first MCU movie I watched. I had ignored Iron Man when it first came out. I had ignored the Hulk when it first came out. And I remember seeing trailers for this movie and thinking, wow, these trailers are really good. And so I went and saw it, and then afterwards I ended up watching Iron Man and the Hulk. So this kind of has sentimental reasons for me. But also because this feels like, I know a lot of people say the plot is all over the place with this movie, and it is. It is all over the place a little bit. But I think this movie gets a really bad rap. I think the inclusion, this is a mini Avengers. This is like 0.5 Avengers. I think the introduction of Black Widow in this movie is fantastic. Scarlett Johansson does a great job and will continue to do a great job and evolve her character. I like the introduction of War Machine. It was so great teasing him in the first Iron Man, and when he actually dons a suit in this one, hey, I loved it. And also, I like Don Cheadle better as War Machine. I just like him better as Rhodey. I mean, I think he's went into the part real good. I like the action in this movie. I like the car battle and the armor that he wears during the racing. It's a throwback to one of his more preferred armors from the comics, I'll say that. I like the end battle. I think the end battle is really good. And you know, for all the flack he gets, I think Mickey Rourke is a menacing villain in this movie. I think he's menacing as Whiplash, and I like Justin Hammer. I think Justin Hammer is pretty, yeah, he's kind of a little bit comic relief, but he's pretty good too. I like the fact that Tony's got to deal with the Palladium giving him poisoning. I like the fact that he's got to reconcile stuff with Pepper and his father. And I like Nick Fury's role in this movie. Nick Fury finally came a little bit more forefront in this movie. I think this movie does a lot of things right. I know it does a lot of things wrong to a lot of people. I just happen to have a total disagreement on that. And I think I may be looking at this movie through rose-colored glasses because sentimentally it was my first MCU movie. But that's the way I feel. If I have to choose between the 3 Iron Man movies, which one to watch, I will always pick this one. It's just weird like that. I like this one the best. So that's my number 11 is Iron Man 2. CJ, what's your number 11?
You've got a competitive. I like Iron Man 1. That's why I put him here.
Okay.
Iron Man 1. First Marvel movie. Great way to start. I gave it 11. Most of that gives me. That's like one of my favorite scenes in all of Marvel. But But it does still have a lot of great scenes, like when he's saving those people at a weird desert place. Yeah.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. I'm sorry, I didn't know the name. The villain, though, are in Mongol. That's what I called him. It's not that menacing. He looks like Voltron from Jesse. But it was a great way to start out, and it did have good effects for its time. Incredible Hulk. But yeah, I think this movie. I don't know. I do like Iron Man 2 almost as much, but not as much, because Iron Man 1, I just think does a lot of things great that Iron Man 2 and 3 doesn't do.
Okay.
Also, it has a great origin story for my Tony Stark.
Okay. Issa, what's your number 11?
I actually have Ant-Man.
Okay.
I put this so high because the effects and the comedy and the casting is just spot on, and I think it's one of the better Marvel movies, but it doesn't really get that much credit for being like a really, really good Marvel movie.
Yeah.
The only lacking thing, I think, is the villain and the wig that they put on Hank Pym's daughter.
Hope.
Yeah, Hope. That wig is horrendous, and I'm glad she got rid of it in the second movie.
Alright, well, number 11 for me, Iron Man 2, for CJ, Iron Man 1, and for Issa, Ant-Man. Alright, we're now in the top 10, so here we go. My number 10 is Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man has always been one of my favorite superheroes. He's been in the top 5 for most of my life. I was real happy with the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi Spider movies, although Spider-Man 3 was a disappointment. I didn't even give the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies a chance because they looked like garbage. And I was happy to see him in Civil War. I'm glad Sony and Marvel were able to make a deal. And they got Tom Holland, you know, spot on casting. He is a great Spider-Man. He's probably my favorite. I've always liked Spider-Man better as the high school or early college years, going through money problems. Aunt May's always having to worry about him, and he's always having to worry about her. He's got girl problems, and you know, he's taking it on the fly as Spider-Man. I don't like the way they have him in the comics now. I think it's garbage, but you know, that's being what it is. So I was happy they went with a very young Spider-Man. I think Tom Holland is great. The MCU gets their casting on the heroes spot on. Maybe not so much with the villains, but he is fantastic. Michael Keaton is always fantastic in everything he does, and I was glad to see him as the Vulture. The Vulture is one of the few villains I never really cared for in the comics, but you know, Michael Keaton does a really good job with him here, and he's one of the better villains of the MCU. This movie is very much like a John Hughes 80s movie. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I guess people my age will know what I'm talking about. Younger people won't. John Hughes was a big name in the 80s. Did stuff like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, classics like that I grew up with. And this movie has a very much feel of a John Hughes movie. And so I'm very happy with that, and I like that. I think this movie nails a lot of things, being a personal story. I'm glad that we didn't have another origin. Some of the casting, though, is what really knocks this movie for me. I have no problem with Zendaya being MJ. I think the way they wrote her in this movie, she's a boring, frumpy type of Debbie Downer type person. I mean, who'd want to be friends with her? I mean, she's terrible the way they wrote her. Fortunately, they write her a lot better in Spider-Man Far From Home. And for those people who don't like Zendaya, my daughter being one of them,
No, I do like Zendaya.
I don't mind her being MJ. The only thing I think is, if you look in real life, Zendaya was a YouTube star.
No.
Yeah, she was on YouTube. She's on YouTube and wanted to be a star and worked hard for it and progressively became a star. If you look at Mary Jane in the comics, that's what she is. Mary Jane always wanted to be a big star, and she ended up through hard work and dedication becoming a star in the comics. So I think Zendaya is fit for the role. I just think they needed to write her better. My problem comes in with the Flash Thompson Ned Leeds character. Now the guy who plays Ned Leeds, he is funny, I'll give him that, and he's good. It's just if you know anything about the history of Spider-Man, you know that Ned Leeds gets framed for being the Hobgoblin. As a matter of fact, for a long time he was considered to be the Hobgoblin. And I don't want to try to fat shame the kid or nothing like that, but there is no way he could fit in a Hobgoblin costume. I don't know why you want to just diversify the cast. Well, I gotta have an Asian, gotta have an Indian, I have a mixed racial person here, gotta have a black person here, gotta have a white person here. I don't understand why you have to do that. Ned Leeds is he'll never become the Hobgoblin, and the Hobgoblin is one of the best villains in in Spider-Man. So I don't know why they did that. Another one is the Flash Thompson. I don't like his character. Flash Thompson is the jock, physically strong bully. And he also gets framed for being the Hobgoblin at one point in time. And I can't see this pencil neck little rich snob being a Hobgoblin. I just can't do it. So for the sake of diversity casting, they kind of ruined that for me. Now, Betty Brant, I have no problem with, and Liz, I have no problem with. Although Liz is white in the comics, and she ends up getting married to Harry Osborn, I have no problem with her part. I think they mess up the Shocker. They could have did a better job with the Shocker. Those are my nitpicks. The real big ones are the Ned Leeds and Flash Thompson characters and the Shocker characters. Otherwise, this movie would have been a lot better because I really enjoy this movie. I have no problem with Marissa Tomei being Aunt May. They want to make Aunt May a little younger. That's fine. I have no problem with that. I really enjoyed this movie. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. So hey, it gets a top 10 for me. CJ, your top 10. What's number 10?
I put Doctor Strange.
Okay. Well,
Doctor Strange, if you can hear me. I'm pretty sure it's the second Doctor Strange movie. There was an older one.
yeah, it was made for TV one. That was terrible.
Doctor Strange has great effects, a good cast, good action. It's creative action because he's a wizard. The characters are memorable. It takes place in different places, and I really like the film. I don't know what to say. It's like
It was something different, wasn't it?
Yeah, because normally you have It's another thing because he can't punch. His fingers broke, so he has to use wizard magic to fight his foes.
Okay.
It's pretty fun. Yeah.
What did you think about the villain?
The villain, Dormammu, was okay. I kind of wish he looked like he did in the comics with the flaming head. The other guy with the weird purple eyes, he looked like Bob the Tomato. He wasn't threatening that much. He was just a weird looking guy who was also a wizard. That's
okay.
Pretty much it.
Issa, what's your number 10?
So it's actually Captain Marvel, and that is because, I really liked the movie. I think, Brie Larson was okay with her acting in this movie. She did a lot better in one of her other movies called Room. She was very good in that movie. I think it was her character that gave her so much trouble, but I really like younger Samuel Jackson, and it was a really pretty movie. Like, yeah, there were some errors in there, like the whole shield thing, Goose. But I thought it was a really good movie, and that fight scene where it plays "I'm Just a Girl," that was like my favorite scene in the whole movie, so I really like that movie.
Alright. So my number 10 is Spider-Man Homecoming. Ace's number 10 is Captain Marvel, and CJ's number 10 is Doctor Strange.
Ace is gonna kill Daddy.
Alright, number 9 for me is The Avengers: Age of Ultron. There has to be a worse Avengers movie, and unfortunately for Age of Ultron, this is it. I do love this movie. I can watch it over and over again. I love the interaction and interplay between the characters. The action is great. The effects are great. Everything basically about this movie is great. I just have a few nitpicks. I think they got Ultron wrong. Now, I think James Spader did a good job as Ultron, but I'm very familiar with Ultron in the comics, and I think they got him wrong. He's too emotional in this movie. He's underpowered in this movie, really. So I think that was a big mistake with that. I also think that this is basically a copy of the first movie. I mean, there's an army of aliens in the first Avengers. There's an army of robots in this one. You know, Ultron is not as good as a villain as Loki. There's a city in distress. You know, it just mirrors the first one a lot. I don't like how Baron von Strucker was handled, to be honest with you. I like Baron von Strucker in the comics. I think he should be a lot more of a badass, and he was just unceremoniously killed off like nothing. And I think that's a waste of a character. I do like how they give Hawkeye more time in this. I love the inclusion of Scarlet Witch. I think Miss Olsen does an excellent job as her. I think the Vision is a great character in this. I like Paul Bettany as him. I think Quicksilver is the weak link. I do like the Evan Peters version better from the X-Men movies. But, you know, I'm glad they've kept Quicksilver killed off. I think this one they just don't do as much with the heroes. You know, in the first Avengers, everybody got a moment to shine, and I think in this one, just some are very underused and you know, just not. Captain America couldn't last 5 minutes with Ultron, but he lasts pretty good with him in that one battle sequence. Thor would probably beat the hell out of Ultron, yet Thor isn't able to do that. I think the romance between Bruce Banner and Black Widow is a little misplaced. It ends up not going anywhere, and I think it was a wrong move of them. I think maybe they realized their mistake and kind of negated that. So Avengers of Age of Ultron to me is a great movie. I can watch it over and over again, but in many ways it was a little bit of a disappointment. But you know, what can you do? You're following up the Avengers, and that's a hard act to follow in my book. So number 9 for me is Avengers Age of Ultron. CJ, what's your number 9?
This one has aged a long time because it's Age of Ultron too.
Oh, you got Age of Ultron as number 9 as well? Alright. Anything else you want to say about it that I didn't mention?
Scarlet Witch OP. I think that's... Oh, yeah, battles. There's a lot of good fight scenes in here. Hulk versus Hulkbuster. The big army fight at the end. The start where they're invading that castle place. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, I like the fights in this movie.
Pretty good.
I just think they made a couple wrong turns in a few areas. Alright. Issa, you're number 9?
Well, let me add something to this real quick that I didn't say. So, this actually made me think of the scene where Scarlet Witch is messing with all of their heads and puts them back into their fears or whatever. And I think that, when it gives hints of, I think, the Infinity Stones, I think, are in this movie. I think this is kind of like the first time they mentioned like all of them together and kind of showed them. But I thought that those scenes where they kind of were in their like own fears were really good and really well.
Yeah, if they had stayed in that type of direction, I think this movie would have been a lot better. But I think they kind of steered from that halfway through the movie, and that's where I think they took a wrong turn.
Also,
so what? Go ahead.
I like a lot of the new characters. I like Scarlet Witch. She was a nice introduction, and I like the way she's played out, making the Avengers see their fears. I like Quicksilver, but dead. Vision, he's also a really good character. I like how he's voiced by the same person who voiced Jarvis, because that makes sense. He's strong, but that's because he has an Infinity Stone.
Yeah. And
I actually really like this Vision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, I think that this movie doesn't get enough credit for setting off kind of the Infinity Stone thing. Because I think that's kind of what it does. It has Vision, you know, it sets that off with him having an Infinity Stone like in his head. And I think it includes more about the Infinity Stones and of what's to come.
Well, what's your number 9?
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, okay.
I love this movie because it is so different, and so it's just the odd one out of the bunch of all the movies they have. I think the effects are so good, and it's such a funny movie. And the fact that you have Regina George and Sherlock Holmes and just all these really good actors in this movie, I think it adds a lot to it.
What'd you think of the villain?
Well, I like Dormammu. I think, obviously, like, it's not what he looks like, but I actually thought he looked pretty cool in the movie.
I'm talking about Caecilius. The evil wizard.
Oh, yeah. He was okay. He wasn't very threatening. I think,
I know you like Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, Tilda Swinton is... I love her. I think she does so good in all the movies she's in.
Alright.
The bad guy in Doctor Strange is like the stereotype for kids who get bullied because of like black eyes and losers. Oh, this is what happens to you.
And I think they switch up a lot of stuff just so that if you have read the comics, you are not going in expecting exactly that. Like, I think that's why they add such like different stuff in it, like why they switch characters and stuff like that.
Okay, well, my number 9, Age of Ultron. Issa's number 9 is Doctor Strange, and CJ's number 9 is Age of Ultron as well. Alright, my number, what are we on, number 8? Number 8 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This movie gets a lot of hate for some weird reason, and I don't know why. I think this movie is great. It doesn't wow me and blow me away like the first one does. So that's why it's number 8. But I love this movie. I think it's funny. I think it has a lot of emotional weight. I think they do a lot with these characters. I like how they make Yondu more of a good guy like he is in the comic books. I love Baby Groot. I like the inclusion of Mantis. I think she is hilarious and one of the best underrated characters to come into the MCU. I like Kurt Russell as Ego. I think Kurt Russell's always excellent in anything he does, and I think he's great as Ego. I like Karen Gillan's Nebula. I know they kind of make her good in this movie, and I'm okay with that, even though I'm familiar with her in the comics as really being a bad guy. But I like Karen Gillan, and I think she does an excellent job as Nebula, and I like to see that. This movie was about family, and I think it hit all the right beats on that. There are 2 problems with this movie to me. One is the Sovereign. The Sovereign are just a waste of time. And I think the only thing you can really say about them is all they're in here for is really to set up Adam Warlock coming in a later time. And I think the whole Ravager rebellion with Taserface, I think that's a waste too. I didn't care for that at all either. It seemed like a joke with Taserface and all them, and hell, the movie makes it even a joke. So I think those two being little weak points doesn't make this movie anywhere near as good as the first one. But I think this is a very good movie, and in some parts it's actually better than the first one as far as the family dynamic wise. But you know, this movie should not get the bad rap I think that it does, and I can't wait to see what they do for part 3. CJ, what's your number 8?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man Homecoming. Okay.
I changed it a little bit because, as you can see, there's a whole bunch of arrows there.
Okay.
Spider-Man Homecoming. I have nothing else to say because you guys have said all the things.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything else for me to say.
Okay.
Other than the end credit scene is kind of cool.
Okay. Well, Issa, what's your number 8?
It's Winter Soldier.
Okay.
I really like Winter Soldier. I think it's like a mini Avengers kind of, and I think that's why it's so loved, because it has like all these. It's basically like Captain America's Avengers if he got to choose. I think the friendship between him and Black Widow is really good, and I think the whole Shield and Hydra thing is also really cool. I like the reveal scene and the fight scenes in this movie. I think that those are really good scenes. The scene where Bucky's mask comes off and Captain America's just standing there like, I know who you are, and he has no clue. And obviously it teases a little at the end that Bucky remembers because he saved Steve. I don't like how they kept alive. Like, I get it's part of the comics, but I don't like how they kept alive the main Hydra guy that was in the building when it fell down or blew up, or when the ship went into the side of it.
Rumlow. Who you got to become Crossbones?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did not like him. I did not like his character.
Okay.
I think they could have done better with that. I like the whole Nick Fury in this movie. I think it's one of the better Marvel movies, but it's kind of underrated.
Okay. Well, actually, that's a lot of people's favorite. A lot of people have that in their top, 3 or 5. Another thing, going back to Guardians 2, I'd like to say, the movie is very beautiful. I think it is a beautiful movie to look at. I think it's shot well. I love the music, and not just the rock and roll. I think the score for it and Guardians 1 are very good scores, and the effects are great for it. And I just think this movie gets garbaged on. I like it. I like it a lot more than a lot of other people. So that's my number 8, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Alright, my number 7 is Thor Ragnarok. Boy, I had the blast with this movie. I actually love this movie. I could watch this movie over and over again. You talk about turning a franchise around. You know, the Thor movies, the first 2, ooh, they were having problems, and they were considered to be the worst of the original Marvel movies. But boy, this movie turned it around, and thanks to this movie being so good, we're going to get a Thor 4. Where to begin? Wow. First of all, the colors. This is a colorful, vibrant movie where a lot of Marvel movies are drab. The music for this movie is fantastic. Man, this is probably the best Marvel score, maybe next to the Avengers, that you can get. I love the look and the sound of this movie. Kate Blanchett as Hela is fabulous. I mean, I hope they can convince her to come back and do Hela again. Hela is such a great villain, and Kate Blanchett does such a great job with her. It's fantastic. I like where they take Thor in this. I like where they take the Hulk in this. I understand they can't do a Hulk movie, and they couldn't do World War Hulk or Planet Hulk or none of that because of the whole thing with Universal. So this is kind of their way of sticking it to Universal by putting the Hulk in here. But man, I like where they went with the Hulk. I like where they went with Thor. I like where they went with Loki. I think everything all around, this is just almost a, this is almost a perfect movie for me. And the only really few things I can say is, well, first of all, I love Jeff Goldblum. He's hilarious as a Grandmaster. And I wish they would make a movie with him and Benicio del Toro as a collector, because they are brothers. And that would be, I'd go see that movie. That would be a great movie. I like Korg and Meek. They're hilarious. Tessa Thompson does an okay job as Valkyrie. I can see why some people get mad about the race change thing. I mean, let's be realistic here. This is all Norse mythology with Thor and Loki and them. And I don't know too many African Americans from Norse mythology. But, Tessa Thompson, you could say that there's Valkyries of all different races and everything, which is pretty what they're going to try to do. She may not be the exact Valkyrie from the comic, but she does a good job in this movie. I have no problem with her. She's actually pretty good in this movie. I actually like Valkyrie a lot in this movie. I think her no-nonsense attitude is pretty good. I'd never seen her before, so I didn't know what to expect. I didn't watch the Creed movie, so there we go. I like Suter in this movie. I'm glad they brought him in here. I think they did a good job with him. This would almost be a perfect movie if for a few minor quibs. Basically, the Warriors 3 get killed off unceremoniously like nothing. And you're talking about 3 side characters of importance from the earlier Thor movies, and they're just killed off unceremoniously, and it's like nothing's ever mentioned of them ever again. I think that was a little wrong. And I also think, this movie's a dark movie. A lot of bad stuff happens. Thor gets his eye cut out. Asgard gets destroyed. Odin dies. A lot of bad things happen. And I think they overdo it with the comedy a little bit in certain areas. I think, I know Thor does have his more dramatic or somber moments in this movie. But I think this movie has a problem balancing the light tones and the dark tones at times. And I think that's a universal knock on this movie, and I tend to agree with it. Also, getting rid of Mjolnir, okay, it seemed like they were going to do that for a while, but no, that's it comes back. I have no problem with that as well. It just shows how strong Hela is. And but I do like Thor better with his hammer, okay? Let's just get that right. I like him better with his hammer. I also think that, for Taika Waititi did a bang-up job for this movie, and I'm glad they're keeping him around. So there's that. And I like Karl Urban as Balder. Now, the Executioner. They do change his character up from the comics. And I do have a little bit of a problem with that, but I understand why they did it, because you don't have the Enchantress in this movie, and I think Karl Urban does a good job, but he's kind of a joke when actually in the comics he's not a joke. He's a badass. So those are my only little pet peeves with this movie. Other than that, it's a perfect movie, great movie, and I can't wait to see, well, I don't know. We'll see what direction they go with Thor 4. But this is a fantastic movie. One I could watch over and over again. And I love the immigrant song in the movie. So this is my number 7.
Daddy?
Yeah?
You know that thing you were talking about, how base about the Valkyries?
Mm-hmm.
Heimdall is black. I think you forgot that.
Yeah, but he's kind of a special type guy. Because he's white in the comics. But Idris Elba's a good actor. and he's kind of like an outside special type guy. So you can see why they did that. I have no problem with the race changing. I know why. I can understand why people would have a problem. I personally have no problem with it, but I'm not going to go off on people that do have a problem with it. So what's your number 7?
Guardians 2.
Okay. Well, you just heard my thing on Guardians 2. You got anything to add to it, or what?
I think Ego is a great villain. I think that he's better than Ronan.
Okay.
And yeah. Also, Kurt Russell playing him, phenomenal job. It's kind of like Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster. Guardians 2, it's also pretty funny. Another thing you didn't say. And is pretty emotional. It has a good twist about how Ego was bad, but the two more win.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, Issa, you're number 7.
I also have Guardians 2.
Okay.
I love Guardians 2. I think it is very equal to the first one. As in, I could not pick a favorite. But this one, I think I like Guardians 1 more than I like Guardians 2. Just the cast and Mantis, and I love her whole character. And I love the big twist, and I love how Nebula. It is about family. I never realized that, but I think that it has such a good heartwarming tone to the movie. And yeah, the soundtrack is really good. It's always good for Guardians. And Nebula and Gamora. I think Nebula is better and more prominent in Guardians 2 than she is in the first movie. Mainly because Nebula is still trying to kill Gamora. Gamora don't really want to kill her, so yeah.
Alright, so my number 7 was Thor Ragnarok, and CJ and Issa agreed, and their number 7 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Alright, my number 6 is Captain America the Winter Soldier, and boy, I said Thor Ragnarok was a game changer for the Thor franchise. Captain America the Winter Soldier is really the game changer for the MCU altogether. If this movie hadn't been the way it was, or the success that it was, I don't know which direction the MCU would have went in. The Russo brothers may have never come back and directed any other movies. This was their first one, and they hit it out of the park with that. So, a lot of people don't really think about that, but this movie is very pivotal in the MCU. What can you say about this movie that can really give it justice? Is a throwback to the 70s political thriller movies. Some damn good action. That whole action part with Nick Fury and his vehicle, and then the whole action part with Captain America, the Falcon, and Black Widow in the car on the freeway, and the Winter Soldier hunting them down. Some of the most fantastic action sequences in all the MCU. Bang up, man. I mean, I was on I remember when I first saw that. Hell, still sometimes when I watch it, I get on the edge of my seat. And the music, the haunting, eerie music every time the Winter Soldier shows up is fantastic. This movie proves that even though Captain America thinks he beat the Red Skull at the end of the first movie, and U.S. won World War II, proves that evil, you just can't sleep on evil. Evil has consequences, and the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. is infiltrated by Hydra, it's fantastic. Captain America questioning his morals about being the yes sir soldier. I do this right away, sir soldier. Take order, soldier. To where he's now looking at the world and he's seeing the way it's changed and having to deal with it. It's not so cut and dry a soldier anymore. Nick Fury is fantastic in this movie. Black Widow is giving a lot more depth in this movie, and her character's built. We get the introduction of the Falcon, who I think Anthony Mackie does a fantastic job for somebody who's always considered a B-level superhero, and he elevates him. And I like what they do with his wings. He's kind of goofy in the comics. He's cute goofy. sentimental Goofy, his costume, but here's more modern take, and I like it. We just get Robert Redford as a villain in this movie. The whole Hell Hydra. I still say that sometimes. Hell Hydra, that's great. The bringing back of Zoloff, and of course the Winter Soldier. For a long time, Bucky was dead in the comics. He was one of the longest remaining dead people in comics. And when they brought him back as a Winter Soldier, it was a big shock. And I think this movie did it right. I think it did justice to that story. And Sebastian Stan is excellent as the brainwashed James Buchanan Barnes. This movie is many people's top MCU movie, and I definitely see why, and I can't fault him for that. Me, it's my number 6, but I thoroughly, I could watch this movie over and over again. It's such a great movie. I can't heap enough praise on it, and McNeely and the other guy who wrote it did such an excellent job. Such a fantastic movie, and the way it changed the MCU is something to think about. So that's my number 6. CJ, what's your number 6?
The Winter Soldier.
Okay, well, hey, add anything to it.
Big twist. Big chop. Pretty much, the twist, if you've read the comics, you can kind of see it coming. But if you didn't, then you'd be like, oh my god, that's that guy from that one movie? Okay, well, I gotta note that. Also, good introduction to the Falcon. I don't remember if Falcon starred in this movie. Okay, I did. I like you said, a whole bunch of the action scenes are very well made in construction. Oh my god. Yeah, we'll be right back right after these.
Okay, Issa, what's your number 6?
So my number 6 is actually Black Panther, and it is because the movie is just stop. The movie is just phenomenal. I think that the actors are amazing. Lupita Nyong'o, Michael B. Jordan, Chadwick Boseman. They are all so great. Angela Bassett, they are just amazing actors. And I think it also adds some of the culture, African culture in there. And the music, I think it just all fits so well. And the whole technology aspect, I like how it doesn't take place in a city or a desert or like a farmhouse like it does in some other movies. But I think that Black Panther I think it deserved its praise. I just thought it was really good, and I really liked it. It actually made me cry when I watched it.
Oh, what?
When I first watched it, because I didn't watch it with y'all, but I watched it by myself. And I actually cried when
what?
he met his dad, when Mayne had froze him and he was in a coma. I like the villains. The only reason why that movie is not one of my even more up in the list is because of the villains. I feel like they should not have killed off Claw. I think he was so funny, and I thought he was such a good villain, and then they just killed him off to get rid of him, and I didn't like that.
Okay. Anything else?
And Michael B. Jordan, they killed him too.
What was that?
Killmonger.
6.
They killed him too. I didn't really like how he just died.
Alright, so my number 6 is the Winter Soldier. CJ, your number 6 is the Winter Soldier. And and Black Panther is Issa's number 6. Alright, we're in the top 5 now. My number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Well, this movie blew me away, like it did a lot of people when it first came out. Excuse me. I think it's because nobody expected it. I mean, who are these characters? Who's heard of these peoples? What? This is going to be Marvel's first flop. Boy, everybody was wrong about that. Now, of course, I had known about the characters. Gamora, Rocket, Drax, Groot, Star-Lord. Of course, Drax was different when I knew him. He was a big guy who can fly around, and he had a cape, and he couldn't really talk too well. He was super strong, but they changed him during Annihilation. I think the change is for the better. I've always liked Chris Pratt from his Parks and Recreation days. He's one of my favorite actors. So when I heard he was going to be Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy, I said, okay, that's it. I'm good with that. That's going to be great. And I like wrestling, and I like Dave Bautista. And I think Dave Bautista, they said Dave Bautista is going to be okay, that's great. And I like Zoe Saldana. Shit. So it was like, you got a good cast here. This movie has a great score, both soundtrack and music in the movie. Great effects, great action, great comedy, great emotion. I mean, that scene at the beginning with Star-Lord and his mom almost makes you want to tear up. This, James Gunn hit it out of the park. James Gunn is, I think up until Guardians came out, was very underrated. And he hadn't really been given his big chance, and he knows his characters and he likes his characters, and they let him have free reign to a certain extent, and look at what he did for him. That's why even with all his misgiving tweets and stuff like that, the controversy he gets in, he's still getting job offers. And they even brought him back for Guardians 3 because the guy is such a good writer-director. Everything in this movie flows. I mean, even from the side characters. I like Ronan. I never really cared for him too much in the comics. He's okay in here. The infinity stuff and the cosmic stuff gets really explored in this movie, and we hadn't had that up until this point, and Marvel needed a movie like that. So this was a good starting ground for the whole cosmic thing. And these characters, you just can't help but to fall in love with them. My wife, who doesn't really care for these movies, if she had to pick, she would pick this movie. She likes Rocket and she likes Groot, and you're talking about somebody who never heard of them before, never knew who they were before, probably thought this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen when the trailer came out with the talking raccoon in a tree. And she loves these characters. And that is a testimony to this movie and its writing and the actors who play these characters. And let's not forget Karen Gillan as Nebula, Michael Rooker as Yondu. And, it was just all around a fantastic, I think, lightning in a bottle, because nobody had high expectations for this movie. And then when it hit, it just blew everybody away, myself included. Even though I had been familiar with some of these actors and some of these characters, and, so much for being Marvel's first flop. That's all I got to say. To many, this is their number one. And again, I can't argue with you on that. This movie has a fresh feel to it. And it's one of them ones you can watch over and over again and just laugh and laugh and laugh. And the action and the effects and everything is just great. A lot of people, the weakness of this movie is Ronan. Yeah, okay, I can see a little bit, but I like him. I like him better in this movie than I do in the comics. Let's just put it that way. So Guardians of the Galaxy to me, number 5, home run, great movie. And honestly, any Guardians after this, 2, 3, hell, if they make 4, they're all going to have a hard time living up to this movie. And it's just going to be one of those things where it's going to be hard to surpass it, because you hit it so great with this one. CJ, what's your number 5?
Your wife's never seen a Marvel movie. What a normie. Okay. Civil War.
Okay.
A lot of people see this as one of the best Marvel films of all time. I would agree. This kind of made a dent in the MCU Avengers New York City timeline, because now they can't be friends. They've officially had a civil war. They've pretty much had a big fight. It has great action. It's funny in some moments, but not a lot. That doesn't need to be, because it's Civil War. It's supposed to be serious and it's supposed to change stuff in the MCU. Also, it brings a whole bunch of new characters: Spider-Man, Ant-Man. Well, not Ant-Man. I think Ant-Man came out before Civil War, but Black Panther also new. The villain. You don't really pay that much attention to the villain because you're paying attention to them fighting.
Mm-hmm.
It's also pretty emotional because, you know, they can't be friends until like something big happens and they need to be friends. But this movie is like, I find it better than Winter Soldier because, well, I find it as a mini Avengers, like the other ones you guys have been talking about. But this is kind of in a question, like kind of also in the DC. What if Batman and Superman had a fight? We had that into a movie, but that sucked. So what if Iron Man and Cap had a fight? We had that into a movie, and that was great. So yeah.
So whose side were you on?
I was probably on Cap's side. I can see why both sides disagreed.
Do you know why Captain America couldn't lift a hammer in Age of Ultron? Why he was not worthy? Because he hid the fact that he knew Bucky killed Tony Stark's parents.
That's the reason.
We gotta keep on talking before you get copyrighted strike.
Alright, so number 5, Issa, what's yours?
It's also Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, okay.
I basically only have like a little bit to say, but that end scene when he grabbed the stone and they all held hands and the whole group, and the Firefly scene is like one of the prettiest scenes in like the MCU universe, man. Like Groot and all of the characters, all of them are just so likable. Like there's nobody you could hate. Like there's no way you could.
I think a lot of people forget that Guardians, besides just being a good action funny movie, has a lot of emotional weight to it. The whole thing with Peter and his mom, the whole thing about Groot dying, sacrificing himself, it has a lot of sad moments, sad emotional moments to it. And I think a lot of people forget that, but it hits all the right beats. I agree with you. So that's your number 5, huh? Mm-hmm. Alright, number 5 for me is Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 1. This is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, and CJ's is Captain America Civil War.
For me is
Alright, my number 4 movie is Captain America Civil War. I was so stoked for this movie when it got announced, and I was wondering how in the hell are you going to do one of the most prolific storylines in comic book history into a movie, and the Russos pulled it off. I think this is a fantastic movie. It's really you could be mistaken and say this is an Avengers movie, but it really still focuses a lot on Captain America. It's very much his movie. You get the introduction of so many new characters: Spider-Man, Black Panther. They're done so good in this movie. Ant-Man comes in, who had been separated from him, and he does a fantastic job in this movie. Hell, he steals a lot of the scenes in this movie at the airport fight. The relationship between Black Widow and Captain America is kind of put on a strain, then kind of redeemed. You get the budding relationship between Vision and Wanda, just like in the comics. And then, of course, the big conflict between Steve and Tony. And I mean, this movie has so much emotion to it, yet has so much action and even a little bit of comedy to it. It's almost a near perfect movie. It really is. You know, it starts off, you have the new Avengers going on a mission, and they kind of screw it up a little bit, and they have to pay for it. And here comes the big bad government wanting to tell them what to do. And Tony's with them on that, because Tony's always had problems with his role as a superhero, not doing enough. Where Captain America is the true soldier, where he knows that sometimes innocents die, you do the best you can, and that is what, but he doesn't trust the government. And so that whole dynamic between them, and plus, you know, he's loyal to Bucky, he's loyal to his friend, and he wants to try to save him, and you can't blame him for that. I mean, that's all he had in those days, and he still feels guilty about his death. Where, you know, the airport sequence in this movie is one of the absolute best scenes in the whole entire MCU. It is freaking fantastic. is almost, you can't get better than that. Almost. My only problem with this movie is Baron Zemo. I don't like what they did with him. I think you could have took him out of this movie and it really wouldn't have made a difference. You could have just inserted some other minor plot device and would have had the Avengers infight. I don't no knock on the actor who played him. I think the actor Daniel Bruhl who played him is pretty good, but I like Zemo how he's in the comics, and I don't like what they did with him here. Other than that, damn near a perfect movie. They did get Crossbones a little wrong. Okay, I can live with that a little bit. But you know, whose side are you on? Pick a side. And that infight between Cap and Tony, it has a lot of emotional weight. You're sitting there the whole time going, you guys got to stop. You guys got to stop. Don't fight. Don't fight. And to see the team break up and the people split over ideology, bless you, is almost heartbreaking, and it's terrible. And it would have ramifications on them later. So Captain America Civil War is my number 4 in the MCU. Okay, CJ, what's your number 4?
Thor Ragnarok.
Thor Ragnarok, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if Grandmaster. Yeah, technically the Grandmaster is a villain, but still, Hela is more the villain. The villains both are really good villains. I think they're probably. I think Hela and Thanos and Loki might be the best Marvel villains.
Okay.
Yeah, but the action's great. It's funny. It's kind of emotional. It's really dark. And it has your expectations high because of the opening scene where he's in like that cage. It's just like you've already described most of the movie, and I still. Whew. Yeah, I think Issa has a lot to say about this movie. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, Issa, what's your number 4?
It's actually the original Avengers.
Okay.
So obviously, I love the original Avengers. I think it's so classic and so just, it's so good. The equality between the amount of screen time for each character is so good, and I think all the characters being there and fighting together, that big scene where they're all in the street, I think that's so classic, and I had to put it in my top 5, you already know, but I think Loki was really good as the villain. I think the comedy was spot on, and you know, I think the costume design was really good too, because I think they did really well on that. And the fact that it had some characters from other movies, like it had Jane Foster's dad, it had Maria, it had
No, Eric Selvig is not Jane Foster's dad. He's her colleague.
Oh, okay, I didn't know. I thought it was her dad.
No.
Okay, well, anyway. Well, I like it has some characters from some other movies. The scene where they're getting all together. I think it all just makes the movie all that. And the action is so good. The way they all work together is just great.
Okay. Alright, so my number 4 is Captain America Civil War. Issa's number 4 is Avengers. And CJ's number 4 is Thor Ragnarok. Top 3 time. Alright, my number 3 is Avengers Endgame. Talk about it's so hard in these top 3 to pick a number 1. But I had to, and Endgame is my number 3. And this movie is a masterpiece, and it brings such peace and satisfaction to the culmination of the whole Infinity War saga. The action is fantastic. The story is fantastic. The the whole thing is just fantastic. Um, I love this movie. I love the whole movie. I love the fact that it's like separated into 3 different parts. The first part is dealing with the aftermath of Infinity War, and it's a sad part. The second part is the whole time travel, time heist type thing, which I think is pretty cool. To me, that's the weakest part of the movie, though. And the in battle, the third part, is my favorite part, and it is fantastic. I love Fat Thor. I love the fact that Thor can't deal with the fact that he didn't stop Thanos from using the gauntlet, and he goes into trauma over it. I love where they're at the beginning of this movie, how Tony and Cap, and Tony's saying, look, I told you this was going to happen, and you didn't listen, and you couldn't stand the government regulation, and now look what happened. The fact that Black Widow is falling apart because she's lost everything, hurting her family, which she considered all these heroes that she worked with, her family. The fact that Nebula is coping with the loss, and Rocket coping with the loss of their fellow Guardians. It's just an amazing movie. And Thanos, getting killed at the beginning of the movie was an oh shit moment for me. The scene where Captain America picks up that hammer, I remember in the movie theater people just screamed and yelled and hooted, and I did too, man. It was wow. It was a standing ovation type moment when that part came. And what a great what a great movie. And the movie's sad where it needs to be. Black Widow dies. Tony Stark dies. Captain America goes back and finally gets the life he wants. There's a bittersweet ending to that. And just a masterpiece all around. I do have a few little quips. I don't really care for Smart Hulk. I like my Hulk Savage, Hulk Smash. That's just me, but he was like that in the comics, Smart Hulk. Captain Marvel, I think they got a little wrong. Of course, if you don't know, she actually did this before she did her own movie. So she really didn't have much to work with, but I think they did her wrong and made her a little bit too much powerful. Thanos would mop the floor with her, let's be real. Okay, let's just get that out of the way, he would. And Thanos is a little different. I know they said that this is a meaner Thanos, more of a fighting evil Thanos, and it shows. And so he's a little different from what you used to see in Infinity War. And if you really liked him in Infinity War, and seeing this version of Thanos may be a little bit jarring. But hey, you may like this version better. He is definitely more ruthless than this one. I'm a little disappointed that the Black Order didn't get a little bit more time in this. I liked Ebony Maw, and I liked Proxima Midnight. I thought they were pretty good. I would like to see them more. I like the interaction between all the heroes and the characters, and the fact that, hey, they got a talking raccoon now on Earth and they're having to deal with it. It's great. And Ant-Man is the savior. He saves the day. He's the one who accidentally, well, the rat saves the day, but he's the one who accidentally comes out and figures it all out and gives them hope. And so somebody that you think is not really an important character surprises everybody and becomes an important character. Probably one of the biggest, most important characters in the MCU. Such a masterpiece. The end fight is so great. Even the A-Force thing, it's still fun. I know a lot of people don't like that. So, Endgame, got to go somewhere, and it is my number 3. And I just honestly, I don't think we're ever going to see heights like this ever again in the MCU. And and if it was a way to end it, if it ended with Endgame, I would be totally satisfied and die a happy man. So that's my number 3, Avengers Endgame. Okay, CJ, what's your number 3?
Infinity War.
Okay.
Well, it's Infinity War. It's set up for Endgame very good. It had an amazing battle sequence. In fact, all the battle sequences in this movie were very good. And like all the characters have just, yeah, they all have to work together to defeat Thanos, and stress, and it's emotional.
What'd you think of Thanos as a villain?
He was probably the best MCU villain since Loki.
Okay. Alright, Issa, what's your number 3?
It's also Infinity War. Infinity War is definitely one of the best Marvel movies. All of them, obviously. The mix of all the different characters and how they talk to each other and how they react with each other is so good, and the acting and the darkness tone to the movie is so good. It starts off it starts off like the saddest way possible, but even in the end of the movie, it's still just throughout the whole movie, just the sadness, and you're questioning, are they gonna win? It's just so good.
Well, okay, what'd you think of Thanos?
I thought Thanos is also such a good villain. I think they did him really good.
Okay. Just one more thing I'd like to say about Endgame is, a lot of people say, hey, Endgame is just a bunch of fan service. And it is. It is fan service to the comics, fan service to the other MCU movies. And I think that's actually a good thing in this instance. There's so many callbacks and throwbacks to the comics and to other movies. It makes it feel like it's all one cohesive whole. From the opening shot where, Hawkeye's family is dusted, you feel his pain from when Scott comes out of the quantum realm and he's so confused about what's going on. And then to the excitement of seeing all these past, in the time heist part, all these past moments from all these other movies and see it from different angles. It's such a great, neat idea. I love it. And I like the fact that a lot of actors came back. Rene Russo, Tilda Swinton, Robert Redford, Frank Grillo. I mean, it's great. Kudos to them for doing it. They didn't have to, but kudos to them for doing it. And the ending fight is just so good. Thanos almost gets beat by Scarlet Witch. The whole A-Force part, everybody doing a little bit of their part. Everybody gets a little moment. It's such a fantastic end battle. They could have did a little bit more with Doctor Strange. They had to keep him busy, I guess, while the the waterfalls and stuff. But overall, great movie. So number 3 for Issa and CJ's Infinity War, and my number 3 is Endgame. Alright, my number 2 movie is The Avengers. For somebody who's mid-40s, born in the early 70s, it never in a million years thought I would ever see anything like this. And the fact that something like this was able to be made and actually be great is mind-blowing. It's life-changing. It was just spectacular. I saw this movie at the theater. I brought my 2 kids. This was the first movie they saw at the theater for the MCU. I'm pretty sure it's one of the first movies CJ had ever seen at the movie theater.
Yeah.
And I was blown away. I still remember the feeling I got while watching this movie in the theater, being blown away, listening to everybody else in the movie theater being blown away, and just a spectacular sight to behold. And it kind of almost brought tears to my eye, the fact that this had been done in my lifetime. The character interactions are fabulous. The effects are great. The fight scenes are spectacular. Loki is a good villain. It's just the way it had been set up in all the single movies, and then to come together and be such a spectacular movie is just, you know, mind-blowing. Everybody got their moment to shine. Hell, everybody got a couple moments to shine. And the final battle of New York is so great. I mean, it's just, this today, it's still many people's favorite, and many still consider it the best, and I consider it one of the best. I could watch this movie ad nauseum over and over again. It's so great. My only little nitpicks are Captain's uniform. I don't really care for his uniform in this movie. And hell, I can't think of anything else. I mean, really, that's my only one little nitpick. Hawkeye doesn't probably get enough screen time as a good guy. I guess you could nitpick about that. But everybody else is so great. The evolving of their characters and just the action. And it's once in a lifetime thing. And you know, for what's his name? Oh man, who's the guy who plays the Hulk?
Oh, Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo. For Mark Ruffalo to come in and play the Hulk, and I remember people booed him at the Comic-Con event where they announced he was the Hulk. People were still mad over Ed Norton. He came in and did a bang-up job, and to many people, the Hulk stole this movie. And he was fantastic in this movie. And, you know, to see him, I thought he's done a great job. I thought he's a great Hulk. And to see him come in and do that is so good. And it's just, you know, once in a lifetime. I can't stress enough how I thought I would never see anything like this. And then for this to be done right, so great. And I really hardly, you know, it's my number 2, but I doubt we'll ever see anything like this ever again, to be honest with you. The excitement from this, I mean, I saw this 3 times at the movie theater, and just the excitement was just so great, and the hype for it was so great, and it lived up to it. And it's very rare that a movie lives up to its hype. So that's my number 2, The Avengers.
I saw this movie a lot more than you did because I remember you used to have it on Blu-ray and I used to watch it.
What's your number 2?
In-game.
Okay.
I'm really tired, so I can't say a lot. But I think that there maybe could have been one possibility that there would be a better way to end off the MCU. I'm happy that it's fan service because, like, these Marvel films, some of them come and go and some of them stay with you until you're old. And Avengers 1 is one of them. I think this is probably one of the biggest films.
Oh yeah, Endgame is one of the, yeah, I mean it's number 1 box office of all time now. So
it deserves it.
It does.
Avatar didn't.
I would have liked to seen Cap go back in time, or I like to see a movie where Cap goes back in time and returns the stones and see his little conversation with the Red Skull. I would have liked to have seen that in the movie, but you know. And I think that the only other thing I have with Endgame is when he blows up the compound, you think more people would get really hurt from that.
Yeah.
I mean, he blew the hell out of the compound, and they just kind of
yeah.
it kind of
And then they
sense.
just kind of forgot about Taika Waititi.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think these will be the best superhero films of our generation.
Okay.
I don't think kids today or somewhere later down the time will have better superhero films than this.
Okay.
DC can't return. Fox has kind of stopped it. And yeah, the MCU.
Alright, Issa, what's your number 2?
So it's also Endgame. Endgame is, if I didn't like my number 1 so much, Endgame would be my favorite. The end scene is just so memorable with all these people and all the secrets hidden in it too. And you don't really expect anything in Endgame. It's kind of just you go in it and you have no clue what to expect. I think the whole thing about killing Thanos at the beginning, that was so crazy. And then just the whole movie was like a freaking box of surprises. Like, it was just so good throughout the whole thing, and there was no, like, you heard the reactions of people in the theater, and it affected the movie. Like, everything in the movie, you felt for them. Like, you feel like you're a part of them now after you've watched all these movies, and then you go and watch Endgame, and you're like, dang, this is really it. Like, I have no clue what's gonna happen.
So both of y'all think Endgame was a good end to the Infinity Saga?
Yes.
And the MCU. I know the MCU will continue, but
Well, which movie did you like Thanos better in, Infinity War or Endgame?
Infinity War, definitely.
Yeah, I think
Okay. All right. Well, that's our number 2. My number 2 is Avengers. CJ and Issa's number 2 is Endgame. Now to our number 1s. All right. My number 1 movie is Avengers: Infinity War. Boy, I was hyped for this movie. I hadn't been hyped for this movie since the first Avengers movie. And, of course, I know the story of the Infinity Gauntlet because I have the comic books in my closet of the Infinity Gauntlet and Thanos' quest for him to get the gauntlet. And so, when that came out in the early 90s, I never in a million years thought I would ever see that on screen. And this movie, although it's kind of an abridged version, and it does make some changes, it lived up to it. The hype for this movie was unreal, and it lived up to it. It is so fantastic in so many ways. It's my favorite MCU movie. The fights are spectacular. The effects are spectacular. The characters are spectacular. The interaction between the Guardians and our Earth's heroes and Doctor Strange and the big battle in Wakanda, it's all so great. Everybody does a great job. Josh Brolin nails it as Thanos. This is Thanos' movie, and he wins in the end, which is something you don't usually see. And I like that. I like that a lot. You know, Brolin did a fantastic job as Thanos. I think he will go down as the most iconic villain of all time. Unless something happens, he will. I like the Black Order, especially Ebony Maw and Proxima Midnight. I really like those two. I didn't like how they died, especially Ebony Maw, but you know, beggars can't be choosers on that front. The movie is just fantastic. It has weight. When Gamora dies, it's very sad. When the Red Skull pops up, I remember everybody going like, "Oh, it's the Red Skull." It answers a question from way early on in the movies of the MCU. When Vision dies, it's very sad. And the whole dusting, I remember it got to a lot of people. I remember sitting in that movie theater and people were just shocked and stunned in silence. And it all started when Iron Man got stabbed in the stomach. I thought for sure he was dead then. I thought, oh, that's it, man. He's dead. He's dead. And you know, the Peter Parker dusting was real emotional. And what a way to just end the movie, and with Thanos sitting there smiling, knowing that he won. The ramifications of Civil War played a big effect in this movie. The Avengers were divided, and you know, they ended up paying the price. And what can you say? I love this movie, and this has become my favorite, and I don't think it'll ever be topped, honestly. And you know, the only few little nitpicks I have are very feeble. I think Doctor Strange in the beginning doesn't put up as good a fight. I love his fight when he fights Thanos and all the crazy things he do, and I hope we see more of that in Doctor Strange 2. I think the Vision's a little underwhelming in this movie. The Hulk gets his butt whipped at the beginning, which, as a person of the comics, I don't necessarily agree with. I think he should have put up a little bit more of a fight. But that beginning is meant to be stunning. Right off the bat, Heimdall dies, Loki dies, and they're very real deaths. And, you know, that movie starts off like that, and it's saying, hey, we're not screwing around, we're serious, you're in for a ride, and it's not going to be a nice one. And, you know, and it delivered. It delivered in spades. So, Infinity War is my #1 Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. CJ, what's your #1?
Avengers. Avengers 1.
The first Avengers?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of points you said in yours. The first Avengers movie has a big impact on me because it was the first movie I think I've ever seen in theaters. But it's a great action film, and like, to me it's the greatest MCU film because it simply has all the things that make an MCU film perfect, plus since it was one of the first ones, nostalgia points, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, there's details that you might not notice, but they're still really good. Like, how Loki refuses to get that drink, I think. Pretty sure he refused that, and yeah, another thing, I think that every hero had their good moments. I think that even Hawkeye did, and he was in the movie for that long.
I thought he had his good moments. I thought he didn't get enough attention since he was a bad guy part of the movie.
Yeah, but I still think that this movie deserves the praise that it gets because it's the first Avengers movie. Without this, we wouldn't have all the other films. I don't even think we'd have most of the minor films.
Yeah.
Ant-Man.
Wouldn't. Okay, Issa, what's your #1 movie?
Is actually Thor Ragnarok. And this is because I love the character of Loki. I think he's one of my favorite characters. And
movies.
I've always really liked the idea of a female villain because there really hasn't been one. And so when Hela showed up, she was just like, let me kill y'all real quick. And it was so, she's such a good villain. She really is just she really is just all just bitter, no mercy at all. You know, and Heimdall being alive and being in that movie, and the Hulk, and Doctor Strange in the beginning being in that movie was really good. I think the movie is really funny. I like Valkyrie. I think it's such a pretty movie too. I think the colors work so well, and the soundtrack is so good too. And the part where Loki goes into Valkyrie's head and it shows Hela with all the swords, that scene is shot so well.
Okay. Thor Ragnarok. So my #1 is Avengers Infinity War. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Avengers theme. We got it in the first Avengers movie, and what a theme, huh? It's such a memorable theme. I love it. It gets me hyped every time I hear it. It just does. And I like this rendition in Infinity War. Even the sad, slow version of it is pretty good. So that's my number one, Infinity War. CJ's number one was the first Avengers, and Issa's number one was Thor Ragnarok. So to go over our list one last time. Let's see. My number 22 was Iron Man 3. Issa's number 22 was the Hulk, and CJ's number 22 was the Hulk. My number 21 was the Hulk. Issa's number 21 was Iron Man, and CJ's number 21 was Thor. My number 20 was Thor 2. CJ's number 20 was Thor 2, and Issa's number 20 was Spider-Man Homecoming. My number 19 was Black Panther. CJ's number 19 was Iron Man 3, and no, I'm sorry. Issa's 19 was Iron Man 3. CJ's 19 was Captain Marvel. My number 18 was Captain Marvel. Issa's number 18 was Thor, and CJ's number 18 was Iron Man 3. My number 17 was Ant-Man and the Wasp. Issa's number 17 was Thor 2, and CJ's number 17 was Captain America: The First Avenger. My number 16 was Thor. CJ's number 16 was Guardians of the Galaxy, and Issa's number 16 was Iron Man 2. My number 15 was Ant-Man. CJ's number 15 was Iron Man 2, and Issa's number 15 was Ant-Man and the Wasp. My number 14 was Captain America: The First Avenger. CJ's number 14 was Ant-Man, and Issa's number 14 was Avengers: Age of Ultron. My number 14 was Captain America. CJ's number 14 was Ant-Man, and Issa, your number 14 was Age of Ultron. I already did that, right? Yeah, okay. My number 13 was Iron Man. CJ's number 13 was Ant-Man 2. And Issa, you have some arrows here. Is it your number 13 Captain America or Civil War?
Captain America.
Okay, Captain America. My number 12 is Doctor Strange. CJ's number 12 is Black Panther, and Issa's number 12 was Captain America: Civil War. My number 11 was Iron Man 2. CJ's number 11 was Iron Man 1, and Issa's number 11 was Ant-Man. My number 10 was Spider-Man Homecoming. CJ's number 10 was Doctor Strange, and Issa's number 10 was Captain Marvel. My number 9 was Avengers: Age of Ultron. CJ's number 9 was Age of Ultron, and Issa's number 9 was Doctor Strange. My number 8 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. CJ's number 8 is
Spider-Man Homecoming.
Spider-Man Homecoming, and Issa's number 8 was Captain America: The Winter Soldier. My number 7 was Thor Ragnarok. CJ, what's your number 7?
Guardians 2.
Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And Issa's was Guardians of the Galaxy 2. My number 6 was Captain America: The Winter Soldier. CJ, your number 6 was
Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier. And Issa's number 6 was Black Panther. My number 5 was Guardians of the Galaxy. CJ, your number 5 was Civil War. And Issa's number 5 was Guardians of the Galaxy. My number 4 was Captain America: Civil War. CJ's number 4 was Thor Ragnarok. And Issa's number 4 was The Avengers. My number 3 was Endgame. CJ's number 3 was Infinity War. And Issa's number 3 was Infinity War. My number 2 was The First Avengers. CJ's number 2 was Endgame. And Issa's number 2 was Endgame. And my number 1 was Infinity War. CJ's number 1 was The First Avengers. And Issa's number 1 was Thor 3. Thor Ragnarok. So I'm sure we made some controversial picks and places on here. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree, but hey, everybody's got a right to their own opinion. And so if you have your opinions or just see your list, I love to hear them and see them. So put them in the comments. Hey, if you don't agree, tell us what you don't agree with. We'd love to get feedback and hear from you on this. And we enjoyed this. I enjoy the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't have high hopes for Phase 4 with the direction Disney and Marvel Studios is going. So if it were to end with Endgame for me, well then, so be it. I got my once-in-a-lifetime thing that I actually thought I would never see. So, You know, and credit to the Russos, because in Infinity War and in Endgame, they were able to have a cast of so many superheroes and so many people, and were able to fit them all in to where it just didn't seem overstuffed, and it didn't work. It worked so well with Infinity War, so good with Endgame, and you know, couldn't be more happier. That's why Infinity War is my number one, and probably will always be my number one. So I hope you enjoyed it, and until then, I will see you next time. Have fun.